emergency food kits. Each contain delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, averaging over 2,000 calories per day. Secure at least one food kit for each family member. For a limited time, save $200, plus get free shipping on all their Ready Hour 3-month emergency food kits. You're not ready if it's not Ready Hour Foods. My Patriot Supply also has solar-powered generators, water filtration units, biomass stoves, heirloom seeds, and critical survival gear. Shop MyPatriotSupply.com today. MyPatriotSupply.com.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online at hims.com/radio. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation to determine the ED medication that's best for you, discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and a range of treatment options, including trusted generic alternatives to the name brands, at up to 95% off. ED is personal, and at Hims, so is treating it. Just go to hims.com/radio and get connected to a licensed medical provider online for free, with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, hims.com/radio. That's hims.com/radio for your free online visit. hims.com/radio.
1620 The Zone.
Edwards moving right with a timer at 5. Left-hand dribble. Now at the top of the key. Right side. 18-footer on the way. It's good for Edwards with 39 seconds left. Minnesota up 5. 102-97. And a timeout by Jason Kidd. Sideline near side. Finds Doncic. Turn and shoot. Missed the 3 on the right wing. Rebound Washington. Irving in the corner. Washington left wing with 5 seconds. His 3. No good. Doncic got the rebound. He gets it blocked. And the game is over. And the Minnesota Timberwolves stay alive.
Live from 50th and Capitol Avenue in the Big O. This is Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and 1620 The Zone TV. Now here's Gary, Nick, and Jimmy.
Hey, guys. Great to see you.
It's great to see you guys here on a Wednesday. I almost said Tuesday. It's got a Tuesday feel, but it's Wednesday because we're off Monday. So that's great. We're already getting ourselves through the week here as I'm trying to fix my camera. Yeah, this is weird. Let's pull that back up. There we go. I don't know what's going on with my camera right now. But that's beside the point. Right now you can see the top of a hat. Oh, maybe it's because I'm trying to rub it in a little bit to all of those Royals fans out there.
As I sit across from you with the Royals shirt.
Yep. Cleveland, who lost against Colorado on Monday. They an offensive affair last night, continuing their winning ways and continuing to lead the American League Central. Oh my gosh, Peter, it is almost June, and my Cleveland Guardians baseball team are still atop the AL Central. And actually look like a legitimate team, too. That's the other thing. I'm starting to get the feeling this isn't fool's gold. So this is exciting.
That's kind of
very, very excited.
That's kind of the internal battle I'm having. Is are the Royals kind of fool's gold because their record, while good,
yeah,
their record against 500 or better teams not so great.
Yeah, and it's weird. I was mentioning this yesterday. Cleveland, when they've had some struggles where they've maybe strung a couple of L's together, it's been against some bad teams. Now, not Atlanta. They had some close contests in that road series, but the White Sox, they lost a series to the White Sox.
The White Sox?
They blew a lead on Monday against a really bad Colorado Rocky team. And then last night, they were keeping Colorado at arm's length, and then they tied up before Cleveland was able to have a little late inning heroics. My guy, Fry guy. Getting it done, but yeah. So, but we're not even halfway there. Major League Baseball season. We're not halfway home here on a Wednesday, but we are halfway through the week, which is exciting because we are 2 days away from NCAA baseball, tournament baseball. That's right, tournament baseball. It's like the postseason when it comes to Major League Baseball too. When we get to the fall, but we've got the field being set. We're going to talk about that today with a guy that you saw on the selection show. that if you were like me, and we talked to Josh Caron about this, Nebraska catcher and most outstanding player of the Big Ten tournament, it just felt like you had to wait a while. I don't know what everybody had going on Monday on Memorial Day. We had some errands to run. We were going to do some house projects. We did all of our fun stuff in the previous few days. So Monday was more of a, hey, let's do some house projects. And I couldn't get out of the house until I knew exactly what was going on in Nebraska. I wanted to know what was happening there. And, of course, they were one of the very last regions to be announced. But Kyle Peterson, who was on the show, and you will see him on the College World Series broadcast. You'll see him in the regionals and super regionals, and he is one of the very best when it comes to breaking down the college baseball field, but also being able to bring you every broadcast that he's a part of to your home in a way that I don't think anybody else can. But Kyle will be joining us at 8 o'clock today. We'll be talking some college football with our old friend Bill Bender of the Sporting News at 9 o'clock. And we'll also be talking some Husker football with Brandon Vogel of counterread.com. Our lineup always powered by the rooferys at John Higgins Weather Guard. He's Peter. I'm Nick. The boys, the other guys, the other 2/3 of the lineup, they are on vacation the rest of the week, Gary and Jimmy. So it is Peter and myself with you today and through the rest of the week. So that's in case you missed us yesterday. That's what's happening there. You mentioned it, and we were talking a little bit about this during the break. It is either a foregone conclusion or things might get interesting as we continue to watch the Western Conference Finals in the association. We said yesterday, though, the Minnesota Timberwolves story is too good to where they would be swept. And lo and behold, they did not get swept. They force a Game 5 in Minneapolis tomorrow. And a little bit later on, I want to say why I think, even though it's never been done, and not putting a good amount of money on the fact that it will happen this year, but no team has ever come back from 3 games to none. But if you remember in 2004, in those Boston Red Sox doing it against not only just flat out coming from behind, being down 3 games to none, but doing it against their arch nemesis in the New York Yankees, there is a few commonalities when it comes to, I'm not saying Dallas is the New York Yankees or even Minnesota's chief rival, but there are some commonalities with the DNA of the way both of those teams are built that I want to get to a little bit later on. One of my favorite things during the silly, slow college football preseason happened yesterday, and that is there's a lot of great things that Athlon does. One of my favorite things that Athlon does, though, and it comes out always right at the end of May, is the annual, we can call this an annual thing now, the annual Big Ten coaches anonymous breakdown of their peers, their fellow conference mates. And we'll get into that because there's a larger discussion to be had about Nebraska. And a lot of people remember other coaches' overall breakdown. And again, if you're unfamiliar with this exercise, the scouting reports, the overall analysis of these teams are coming directly from coaching staffs. And it could be I don't know if we've ever gotten confirmation. I need to talk to somebody at Athlon and say, have you ever gotten a head coach to do this? But typically it's a staffer, it's an assistant coach, someone, though, that is a big part of looking at these teams from top to bottom and an integral part of putting together a game plan against these teams. So it's not just, I've heard this from another guy who said this about this team. So that's how I look at them. Now, these are assistant coaches, or at least members of the coaching staff, that have direct knowledge, and it's their job to know about these teams. Whether it was, the previous years, we always assumed, it was probably fellow Big Ten West coaching staffs that were talking about Nebraska. And then if you were Ohio State and people were talking about you, it'd be someone out of the East. And that's how you would look at them. Or at the very least, you had them on your schedule. Maybe you just play them this year, and then you're going to play them again the following year. So it's always interesting to hear how coaches look at the other and how they look at the other programs. But Nebraska's especially, that we'll get into today. We've got Husker baseball news that actually doesn't have anything to do with Friday, doesn't have anything to do with this weekend in the NCAA tournament, but a former Husker. Last time Nebraska was in the NCAA tournament, there was one player in particular that stood out and had not only a major role defensively and at the plate, but also on the mound, is getting the call up to the Atlanta Braves organization. Spencer Schwellenbach will tell you about that. Also, we've got, I don't know, this one, to me, I'm conflicted. The Caitlin Clark game that she had last night, but then the subsequent comments after the game about how she is being officiated. It was another example of where I think there's a reason we will continue to talk about Caitlin Clark, beyond just her ability, beyond just her, her unbelievable talent, and the fact that people from all over the country, when the Indiana Fever are either playing at home or on the road, are going to want to see her, are going to want to see 22 because she is must-watch television. She's must-watch basketball in person if you have that opportunity to do so. But there are moments on her demeanor and even on occasion her comments that make you wince a little bit. But we'll tell you the latest when it comes to that as well. As we mentioned, NBA Western Conference Finals, we'll get you more into that. Peter and I were just talking about this before we came on the air as well. I feel like I have to do this maybe on a weekly basis. I don't feel like I'm doing it every day, but at least on a weekly basis, to remind you that if you're not paying attention to the Stanley Cup playoffs, now that they are also in their respective conference finals, these are some of the better games. Last night was no exception. You had another overtimer between the Panthers and the Rangers. The night before, you had a Dallas Stars team that was down 3 goals, and all of us, or down 2, and all of a sudden scores 3 goals in a matter of 3.5 minutes to take a lead and then hold on to win on the road in Edmonton. A lot of drama going on. You've got tight series. You said this, Peter, now that the Panthers and Rangers have knotted that series up in the Eastern Conference Final, 2 games apiece, that it looks like we're heading to a Game 7 in that one. I wouldn't be shocked if Edmonton and Dallas also go into a Game 7 the way that those ones are being played.
Yeah,
too.
the trends it's looking like dual Game 7s, which I bring it on. I would love that.
Yes. Yeah, I know, again, it's cliche.
As a neutral viewer, yeah. You're like, oh, yeah, Game 7, let's do it.
Right. If you do what we do, it's almost in some type of handbook that we've never seen, that you have to talk about how special Game 7s in the Stanley Cup playoffs are compared to other Game 7s. Can we just admit Game 7s are awesome? I don't care what sport we're talking about.
Any sport, any context.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Yes, there's something about the energy, the sport itself of hockey, the physical nature, the fact that they're on skates moving that fast. A lot of things that maybe we overlook because it's just what we kind of expect now when it comes to the way that they play. But Game 7s in the Stanley Cup, I don't even know if I can explain it, why it feels and looks, sounds different than, say, a Game 7 in the American League Championship Series, or Game 7 in a Western or Eastern or NBA Finals format. I don't know. Maybe if you have gone to games, elimination type games in person in hockey, maybe that makes more sense. I don't know. But it is. I can tell you, it is just different. There's the sense of urgency, the way that the crowd responds to every little touch of the puck, as opposed to the previous 6 games, is different. It all is. But we would be so lucky to have 4 very good organizations, talent in so many different ways, whether we're talking about goaltending, whether we're talking about scores, whatever it might be, that you have 4 teams built in a unique way that have been able to utilize the areas of the matchup that favor them when they've gotten a win. And to be able to see game 7s, possibly potential game 7s in both the Eastern and Western Conference Finals and the Stanley Cup playoffs would be a major gift to the sports viewing society. It would be fantastic. If you want to weigh in on the show, 402-951-1620. That is the number to the 42-degree hotline. The Source by your mom's house. We're going to get into a lot of college football on top of college baseball today. But at any point, if you want to weigh into the conversation, you can hit us up in the Equitable Bank inbox where they take banking personally. Doug and his staff, tremendous work as always. I did find out, though, that they were closed on Memorial Day, even though we tried to make it know that we had them open. I don't say they were giving us bad information. We just had them open. But Doug, his work, or his fantastic team, they do great work. Equitable Bank inbox. You can email the show. I am Handley at 1620thezone.com. And then the JTech Construction Zone Twitter feed, where they are very busy fixing roofs, especially in my neck of the woods. Also, you can tweet me. I am at Nick Handley 1620. So I want to get into this Athlon anonymous breakdown, if you will. This is the Big Ten coaches anonymously talking about their conference opponents for 2024. They've looked at them. They've already started to probably get into their spring games that they saw. And again, these are coaches, these are coaching staffs that have a vested interest to these particular teams because they're on the schedule. So they're going to be a part of a overall rundown. Let's just, I'll give you a general one. I thought this one was actually kind of interesting because a lot of the breakdowns I thought were relatively positive. This one was interesting. This is about Illinois, and of course Nebraska, big opponent on the Friday night game. So this was said about Illinois, and I don't know, maybe this was coming from a Nebraska staffer. Who knows? Who knows, Peter?
Who knows?
This is the fun part about this is you can always say, ooh, that sounds like
whodunit.
Yeah, it is. It's a classic whodunit. Who said it? This is what was said about Illinois from a fellow Big Ten peer and a coaching staff. Brett Bielema might not be on the hot seat, but this is definitely a prove-it season for him. It feels like they lost their good momentum with their staff and their roster about 2 seasons back. Brett built the program back up by finding and developing a lot of local and regional guys instead of swinging and missing in places like Texas and Florida. They've lost some key in-state battles recently that hurt them. The Leary kid, Donovan Leary, the Leary kid could push Luke Altmaier. That could be a really interesting quarterback battle to watch. This isn't a bad roster at all, but if they have another losing season, the momentum will be gone. So for Illinois, that's an interesting assessment. That the bigger takeaway is the overall shine that was on Illinois, especially in Brett Bielema's first year with the Fighting Illini, which, again, if you look at that season and what Illinois was able to accomplish, it was a lot of overachieving because remember what Brett Bielema inherited from Lovie Smith. There was a belief that, hey, these are all Lovie's guys and, they're kind of checked out. And I think that was the narrative around that team in the first year of Brett Bielema. And when he took over in that 2021 team, you could tell he was obviously very much aware of what that narrative was. So he publicly, and I'm sure he did this internally as well. I'd like to think that Brett Bielema would do this internally before you do it publicly. He publicly challenged that team that essentially, I don't know if we have any guys that are in our starting lineup right now that still have eligibility that would be coming back as starters the following year. And essentially, if you want to leave, go ahead and do that. Because I don't know if we have anybody that is essentially going to be a part of this team next year. And it was a very bold move. Now, this wasn't a masterfully successful season in 2021. But if you remember what that team did in that season, is they were able, the following week after that was said, and we're thinking, oh man, Brett Bielema is just, essentially he's just shot a big hole into the rest of the season. They're not going to get anything. What do? They go out the following week and they beat Penn State. And so there was a method to that. Then what do they do in the following season in 2022? Well, they rattle off an 8-win season. And at one point, they were on top of the Big Ten West and in prime position to get to Indianapolis and represent the Big Ten West in the conference championship game. Now, they ended up falling to a tie for second, finishing 8-5, but a 5-4, very respectable conference season. And that was a good team. Now, to this anonymous coach's point, last year was largely disappointing for that Illinois team. They dropped back to 5-7, but it was a 5-7, which is interesting. In 2021, they finished 5th in the Big Ten West. Last year, they finished tied for 4th. But at the end of that 2021 season, you could see that, all right, well, maybe Brett Bielema has got the attention of his guys. This is a guy, I mean, not that anybody questioned whether he was taking it serious or not, but this is a guy that is obviously taking it very seriously. He wants to get this thing as competitive as possible, and understanding that there was a window with the Big Ten West that if he could have the type of roster that Brett Bielema has a reputation of recruiting and being able to draw in, that they could be right there in the mix, and they were in year 2. But then you take a significant step back the following year where maybe you're not going to have an 8-win season in 2023, but you'd at least like to see the team remain bowl eligible. They fall back to a 5-win season. So you're kind of back to where you were when you started in 2021. But the big difference is there's not a lot of that momentum leading you into the following year as there was in 2021. So it's an interesting, very short breakdown of Illinois. Now, some of these breakdowns are a little bit longer than others, but the Illinois one is short and to the point of, in just now 3 years as Brett Bielema's run, it's only had one season with a bowl appearance, a season that had, again, as I said, it was a very exciting year for Illinois because they were in the mix to win the Big Ten West. It didn't happen, but you're thinking, okay, that didn't happen. You lost a lot of key players, but what's your step forward? What's your encore? 5-7 season. That is disappointing. So I would agree with whoever this coach is. I don't think anybody's looking at Brett Bielema and saying, yeah, he's on the hot seat next year. Yeah, this upcoming season is a do or die.
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't go that far.
No. And because, I mean, what truly is the expectation for the Illinois football program, right?
That's the thing, yeah.
You're in this new Big Ten right now where you have no divisions. So you're not just honing in on those that group of teams that you know you're going to play annually. You're going to be all over the map. But for Illinois, there was something that was brought up about losing some key in-state battles. It's the one thing that I felt really did Lovie Smith in. There's a lot of things about Lovie Smith that I think he could attract and even to an extent coach on the defensive side of the football. But in Lovie Smith's time at Illinois, he was only able to get, I couldn't believe this, one player from the state of Illinois in that entire time. One. And as we know, Illinois got talent, especially in the Chicago area.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And I mean, hell, even Northwestern that has academic restrictions that you have to overcome to be eligible to be a student at Northwestern and to play football. Even they are having a better success rate of getting guys from the state of Illinois than the University of Illinois in Champaign. To me, that was baffling. And since Brett Bielema has been able to remedy that situation a lot more so than what Lovie could do. But that is another part of the equation of, okay, you showed that you can do that. But as this anonymous coach said, when you do have an area that you're really trying to, it's going to be impossible to lock down the borders of the state of Illinois when it comes to talent staying in the state of Illinois, but you want to have a lot more wins than losses. And that's the part where when you're in the mix for maybe some high 3, 4-star guys in the state, and you're part of that consideration, but you don't win out, people start asking questions, especially if some of the downfalls in the field you can directly point to the roster and say, are we getting the best types of players here when you are sitting right there in an area that is, I won't say it's as talent rich as, say, it's the state of Texas or even California, but there is a lot of good athletes and a lot of good football players in the state of Illinois. And it does make for an interesting season. Again, they could have a repeat of a 5-7, and Brett Bielema will be back to coach. Now, what does that do for year 5? Sure. Makes people a little bit more edgy. But ultimately, with the Big Ten, and this is a conversation maybe for another day, but with the Big Ten, when you look at a lot of those teams, especially out of the Big Ten West, not necessarily even where they immediately fit in this new Big Ten landscape, like what tier would they be in, but what is the overall expectation to the higher-ups, your athletic director, your people who are going to support your collective, how you're going to support name, image, likeness, how successful are you when it comes, well, first of all, how attractive are you when it comes to possible transfer portal destinations? All of those things matter. But if you're, say, looking at the Big Ten and knowing that you can't compete on a lot of the different levels when it comes to playing the game, and when I say playing the game, meaning being able to build your roster with the resources that are now available to you, being able to take advantage of what type of collective. I don't know anything about Illinois' collective. I couldn't tell you if it's competitive or not. But if it's maybe mid-level to below mid-level, what do you truly expect out of a team like Illinois? It's a good example. It's a starting off point for this anonymous coach's breakdown. But it's one of the few that I read last night that are actually sort of negative. But it makes sense because it's a team, and there's quite a few of these teams in the Big Ten. It's a team that you wonder about what their overall path to success will be without the luxury of a weak division. And hey, I'm not here to say Nebraska's any different when it comes to the inability of taking advantage of a weak division, because when was the last time was Nebraska ever in the Big Ten championship when it was West and East? Yeah, they were one of those Legends leaders, but we knew the West division was inferior to the East division. I mean, that's just the way it was set up. And Nebraska never took advantage of that as well. But as we see this internally covering that team, you can see the effort that is being made to make that a upper middle tier to possibly banging on that top tier's door. They're putting the resources in place to where they can strive for that. Can you say that about the Illinois of the world, the Northwesterns of the world, the Purdue's of the world? I'm just using the West teams as an example. Iowa's interesting because I don't think it's a matter of resources. I think it's a matter of philosophy with the head coach. You can win and do a lot of great things with great defense and great special teams, but at some point you're going to need an offense. Will that ever change as long as Kirk Ferentz is there? Or is that going to take a new head coach that'll be able to shake things up a little bit? But, Iowa's got a lot of components that you would think can at least help you survive, but will you ever be in contention for something bigger than just a solid 7 or 8 win season? I don't know. Wisconsin's another great unknown right now because you would think they've got the head coach in Luke Fickell. Again, another program that holds itself accountable, that holds itself to a high standard, and that seemingly has resources that will allow them to compete at the big-time level in that conference. But were they also, as a model of consistency as they were, as Wisconsin was for a long time, were they a product of, again, a weak division in the Big Ten West? I don't know. Like my confidence level would be those 3 teams that I just mentioned, Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, that are at least in a good spot, and it's a program that holds himself to a higher standard, or at least accountable, and the coach is accountable. They'll pay you. It'd be a great job if you do right by that team, but you need to get that program elevated to your level of expectation with what type of resources that they're putting into it. I don't know if I can say that about Purdue, Illinois, Northwestern. I feel like I'm missing somebody here. Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Minnesota's another interesting one, too, because we've heard now several times.
They're kind of in that gray area.
I think so, too, because I think Minneapolis is, first of all, it's a great city. So I think just that on its own is attractive. Good facilities there between Huntington Bank Stadium. I've seen their indoor football facility, which is not that old. In fact, it's relatively new. They've put resources into it. There's a lot of backing of the vision of their head coach, PJ Fleck. But how many times in the last year now have we heard PJ Fleck pleading with Minnesota fans, we need your help when it comes to our collective, with the Dinkytown Collective. They need that type of assistance. So I think there's a lot of things on its face on the surface level for Minnesota that is attractive. But when it comes down to, hey, I got Minnesota on my list, but I also got Tennessee on my list. Tennessee's collective is way more competitive. That maybe even initially it's not why you're drawn there, but you want to know while you're there that you're going to have the opportunity to maximize off your name, image, like. These are all things that student athletes, especially when it comes to trying to put together as competitive of a roster as you possibly can. Are you going to have that path to the NFL? Are you going to be on a team that is going to be relevant in that conference? And what type of bank are you going to make when you're there too? All of those things matter. Yeah, Minnesota's an interesting one. The other three, though, the Purdue, Northwestern, Illinois, they're the ones that I would consider from a standpoint of how they're competing with the other teams when it comes to those matters. You just don't hear a lot. We'll get to some of these other teams too, especially Nebraska, because the big question I have today, what the reputation is for Nebraska, what it was, and how close is Matt Rule and his coaching staff, this roster, how close are they to changing that narrative for the good and being able to keep the narrative on that side of a respected program as opposed to, they always look good. They're the get off the bus team, meaning when they get off the bus, they look damn good, but then you're just like, wow, what's going on? I mean, we remember that was the old reputation with Nebraska, as Matt Rule is trying to change that to something of substance. Can they do that? And are they closer to doing that in year two than what maybe some even believe? We'll get into that. Also, we've got some CBS Sports Big Ten futures odds. Where's Nebraska?
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. This is so much fun.
People love the futures.
We love the futures. We love the lists. All of that stuff that we have for you from the college football front. Again, I mentioned we're going to be talking to Kyle Peterson of ESPN. We'll get his thoughts not only on the field for the NCAA tournament, but also Kyle, who has seen Florida. How is that matchup going to be on Friday? I've had quite a few people ask me already. So what do you think about that matchup? And as we talked about this yesterday with Brian Christopherson, something about just being able to see past the name on the front of that jersey in Florida and Jack Caglione. If you look at that roster, Jack Caglione is extremely impressive. Everything about him, from what he does at the plate, what he does on the mound. He's an amazing two-way player. But the numbers outside of Jack Caglione aren't overwhelming. Is Nebraska in that mindset? And we talked to Josh Karen about this yesterday, where they have the ability to be very balanced with their approach, and they have the ability to reset, loosen up, and go about their business the way that they should. And here's the most important thing, Peter. That game is on a Friday, not on a Tuesday or a Wednesday.
The midweek.
Yes, not a midweek game. So now from here on out, unless you get to the College World Series, the next midweek game that Nebraska would be involved in would be in Omaha. That'd be cool. We would go ahead and say, I don't
that'd be a
even
good
care.
trade-off.
Yeah, I don't care what the record is on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. If the next time they would have to play on a Tuesday, Wednesday this season would be in Omaha at the Chuck, I'm good with that.
Yep.
Be totally fine with that. We'll get into that. Also, again, more reaction from last night's big win for Minnesota to keep their season alive. And I will get to this a little bit later on. If you think about the origin of a 3-0 comeback, my mind always goes back to 2004 and the Boston Red Sox and what they were able to do. You always look for some common links that if it were to happen in a different sport. And I found a couple of common links between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the 2004 Boston Red Sox. You're probably thinking, what the hell would this be? Pedro Martinez walking through the door? No, he's not.
Special advisor to the head coach for the Wolves.
Is Big Poppy talking to Finch right now? No, nothing like that. But
Big Poppy now has stake with A-Rod in the Wolves.
That's true. In fact, he was present at a handful of the Boston Celtics games in the Eastern Conference Finals too, alongside with Donnie Wahlberg. Yeah, really, the who's who of Boston. They were all present there, and I'm assuming they will be there. Are you kind of rooting though for a Boston Dallas series for the fact that we get to see Kyrie come back to Boston? Because that's not a fan base that's going to be overly welcoming.
The funny thing is that was like in the back of my mind. I kind of had that thought, but then I was thinking of all these other things like, oh, it's going to be so fun to watch Luka against this Boston team, and then I kind of lost the Kyrie bounced around to so many teams over those years that in my mind I'm like, oh yeah, he did play for the Celtics and committed to them and then left, and they do not like him at all. So that would actually be a very intriguing storyline that initially I was not even in the front of my brain.
I agree, but
from a pure competitive perspective, I would prefer Celtics Wolves. I think that would be a much more entertaining competitive series. If it's Boston Dallas, I don't know if
all Dallas does though is they win, and Luka
they do have a lot of good pieces. I don't know. I just think Boston matches up better if the Dallas is the one that advanced. But yeah, who am I to count out Dallas after the run they've been on here?
It's kind of fun getting grumpy Luka after games too. grumpy Luka he's good for sports. Nick G in the stream says, why are we talking about Brett Bielema on a Tuesday after Nebraska baseball wins a Big Ten title? Well, first of all, it's Wednesday. On said Tuesday, we spent the entire show talking about Nebraska baseball. So
I thought about
Nick, you weren't with us yesterday, my man, and we will be talking more Nebraska baseball. But this is one of the most fun college football days when it comes to Big Ten, when we get the anonymous coaches breakdown. We get to find out what other coaches think about your team. Come on, Nick, get on board, my man. No, we'll talk plenty of baseball. Don't you worry about that. We got you covered. And I'm with Nick on feeling. He said a Tuesday. It does. It's very Tuesday.
And I just threw it up on there under my name. That's what I thought about putting it at the beginning of the show, and because I'm like, well, I don't know what day it is. The Monday holiday always throws off my calendar.
Today's the day that once you get through, because then all of a sudden you're on the second half of the week. You're through you push through the middle of the week. Yeah, you're over the hump. Then I think everybody usually catches back up on Thursday. But yeah, most people yesterday were in Monday mode. Today you're in Tuesday mode. And then once it's like you're going to skip Wednesday because tomorrow when you go to work, you're going to be back realizing, hey, just 2 days away from the weekend.
I'm intrigued to see if I'll take out the garbage too early.
No, they're going today. Oh, you're talking about your neighborhood, yeah,
because it pushes.
Oh yeah, it never fails. Come on,
it pushes a day, and then I am like, well, I'll tell myself all day they're not coming tomorrow, but then I'll still probably.
My trash day is Thursday. I guarantee you tonight there'll be people putting out their trash cans, and I'll sit back and go, ha 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 ha! You're so uninformed.
They
don't know what's going on right now. That's right. And Keegan says, who needs NIL when you have Fleck Bucks? Yeah, that's right. Which I always thought were like Schrute Bucks for folks that are fans of The Office. The value of the Schrute Buck, probably very similar to the value of the Fleck Buck. And that's true. But unfortunately, kids do not come to Minnesota to acquire Fleck Bucks unless those actually have monetary value like you would be able to get name, image, likeness. Well, that'd be great. And couldn't you see PJ Fleck saying, hey, you know what? We have a great NIL deal. You get to earn Fleck Bucks. Like, oh, cool. So can I actually put that in a savings account? Well, no. But you get cool little perks around the football facility.
Little treats.
Yep.
Little treats.
Got things all around to make your stay as a University of Minnesota football player much more pleasant.
You
with
get a custom paddle.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you acquire enough Fleck Bucks, you get your own row the boat paddle, an oar, if you will. Oh, it's
accumulate them, and maybe we'll just get you a little boat.
Yep. And then at that point, if you accumulate enough Fleck Bucks, you will have earned one true NIL dollar. Yeah, get yourself a copy of the Star Tribune. It'd be really cool. All right, when we come back, we will get back into the Nebraska. First of all, some baseball news, as I mentioned, with one of the great two-way players to play for Nebraska here in recent time is getting the call up for the Braves. Also going to be talking to Kyle Peterson, getting his thoughts on Nebraska, Florida. That'll be coming your way at 8 o'clock. More from the Big Ten coaches, the anonymous coaches breakdown of their upcoming opponents, including what coaches say about Nebraska, futures odds, and more from last night's Minnesota Timberwolves victory over the Dallas Stars. Now I'm getting Dallas Stars are still around too, but yes, the Dallas Mavericks. Glad you're with us on a Wednesday. Yes, it is Wednesday. Glad you're with us. We are back with more here on 1620 The Zone.
Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone and 1620thezone.com. Big names, big games. We've got them all. 1620 The Zone.
Host is roasting every morning. How does Host Coffee Services provide the best coffee for your workplace? By finding the richest and most robust coffee beans from all around the world and bringing them to our Nebraska roastery, where your coffee is roasted fresh and delivered straight to you.
Proudly serving Nebraska since 1972. Host Coffee Services is always roasting something good for you.
The biggest pro football contests in Vegas are back. Circa Survivor and Circa Million are now up to $16 million in guaranteed prizes. 2 ways to win, no rate. Circa Survivor contestants select one team each week with no point spread. Last the longest to win it all, $10 million guaranteed. In Circa Million, take 5 picks against the spread each week for your share of $6 million guaranteed. Quarterly and full season payouts. Enter in Nevada, play from anywhere. Circasports.com for details. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-238-7633.
Hey there, Nebraska Lottery fans. It's me, Vanna White. I'm so excited to tell you about the new Wheel of Fortune scratch-off game from the Nebraska Lottery. You could win up to $50,000 instantly, or enter your non-winning tickets at nelottery.com for a chance to win a VIP trip to Los Angeles and the Mega Money Maker event on the set of Wheel of Fortune. You could spin to win some big money.
Wheel of Fortune top prize odds, 1 in 112,000.
Introducing Modern Real Estate, the game changer in Nebraska's property market. With a competitive 2% commission rate, we're making buying, selling, and investing more affordable and transparent than ever. Our experienced agents blend local expertise with cutting-edge technology to provide top-notch personalized service to all clients. Don't settle for less when you can save big without compromising. Visit modernrealestateco.com and experience the future of real estate today. Modern Real Estate, redefining the way you do real estate.
Seasons change. Why not your tech? Upgrade now during the Dell Technologies Summer Sale event and save on select PCs like the XPS 16, powered by Intel Core processors. You'll be able to bring your most intensive projects to life with built-in AI, minimalistic design, immersive visuals, and cinematic audio. When you shop online at Dell.com/deals, you'll have access to exceptional tech and electronics plus free shipping on everything. Amazing prices await you for a limited time only at Dell.com/deals. That's Dell.com/deals.
Sorry, but we actually have a wait list for our Monstera.
Shaw's greenhouse is really bringing in the green.
We can't keep snake plants in stock.
She needs a construction manager to build on her roots and grow.
We could add a whole section for ferns. Here we'd have dahlias, dahlias, and more dahlias.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Are you the decision maker in your company? Consider this. For the first time in decades, there's a better option for a corporate card and spend management platform. Meet Ramp, the only corporate card and spend management system designed to help you spend less money so you can make more. Most corporate credit cards offer points as incentives, but those points amount to less than their worth in real cash value. Ramp's business cards offer you cash back, real money in your pocket. Plus, you control who spends what with each vendor. And Ramp software collects and verifies receipts automatically, which means you'll stop wasteful spending and close your books in hours instead of days. Businesses that use Ramp add up to 5% to their bottom line the first year. If you're a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. And now get $250 when you join Ramp for free. Just go to ramp.com/sports. Ramp.com/sports. ramp.com/sports.
Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply.
Now back to Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone.
Good stuff from Spencer Schwellenbach. We all remember Spencer Schwellenbach. In fact, the last time Nebraska was in the NCAA tournament, the last time that they were holding some hardware as Big Ten regular season champs, obviously before until last Sunday, that is. Spencer Schwellenbach was a huge part of that Nebraska baseball run and a big part of that team that was extremely veteran-laden. And that was when we finally got to see not only a 100% fully healthy Spencer Schwellenbach, but also what he was thought to have done earlier in his career at Nebraska when it came to having a presence on the mound. He was recruited by Darren Erstad as a shortstop, but also there was the idea that they'd be able to use him on the mound, but he had some injuries coming out of high school going into college that they were never able to really heat him up. And then he took on one of the more exciting roles in that 2021 season as the closer. And there were several times I remember being on a broadcast where we would be looking at any type of radar gun or any type of TrackMan numbers that would tell us what Spencer was pumping. And he reached triple digits a handful of times in the games that I did. So a guy that can live in the mid-90s, a guy that also had a really solid slider. And essentially, he was a two-pitch guy at Nebraska as the closer. He was throwing fastball, slider, didn't use much of a changeup. Well, now you fast forward. Remember, once he got drafted, when he was drafted in the second round for the Atlanta Braves in the 2021 draft, he had Tommy John surgery pretty shortly after the draft. And once he had the recovery that he did, the thought was to, again, his athleticism was obviously a big benefit to him, but they wanted to build him into an actual starting pitcher, or at the very least, a guy that if he's going to have a permanent stay up with the big league club would be a very impactful arm out of the bullpen. Well, Spencer Schwellenbach is officially being called up. He gets to skip AAA and is being called up to the Atlanta Braves. Of course, with Strider's injury, they're looking for some more help on the arms. And knowing the type of season that Spencer Schwellenbach has had, he started the season out in high A and was able to be promoted to double A, where he has gone 45 innings. He is sporting a 1.8 earned run average with 51 strikeouts to just 10 walks. And you're doing that at the class, or I'm sorry, that he was with the high A, then being promoted to the double A level. You're doing all of that at the double A level with the Mississippi Braves. So he will be one of those rare promotions that you don't even sniff into the triple A level and you go right to Major League. Now, what is unknown for Spencer Schwellenbach is, will this be more of a spot start, or is he someone that has a chance to stay up with Atlanta for the duration of the season? He's only 23 years old. He's really just getting going with what he's able. A lot of people in the Braves organization and in the Major League Baseball prospect analysis feel like you're just scratching the surface with what he can do. And I mentioned what he possessed when he was at Nebraska, and it was a fastball, slider, and that was it. Now he's got a little bit more of a curve to go along with it. He's been able to effectively use his changeup. And I thought this was an interesting scouting report on Spencer Schwellenbach when it comes to pitchers that had other experiences defensively other than just being on the mound. And, of course, you're playing one of the most important positions as a shortstop. That experience as a shortstop, as a really a long-time shortstop when he played for Nebraska, is actually a pretty it's high up on a lot of scouting reports as far as your ability to throw strikes, having that repetitiveness of just being able to have the ball and just let it go. I thought that was interesting when it comes to the accuracy that you're seeing in a lot of the strikeout numbers. I mean, that's a hell of a strikeout to walk ratio at 51-10. You'll take that at any level. But besides what he throws and having to change up with a little bit of sync, the fact that his overall delivery, it's a very simple delivery, and they also liken that to his ability to play a Division I shortstop, which I thought was, again, an interesting evaluation there when it comes to guys that play either middle infield or handle the baseball a little bit more regularly, having more of that simplistic delivery that allows you to be consistent, that allows you to really pound the strike zone. And Spencer Schwellenbach has taken kind of a fast track to the big league level. So that was really cool to see that yesterday, that for a guy that just got on the mound at a highly competitive level, the collegiate level, his final year at Nebraska, and that was just as a closer. So that was in limited action. I think the most we ever saw him pitch in a game, I think they did stretch him out to almost 3 innings, one game, but typically it was into just that typical closer role. Again, you go back, 2021 is when he was drafted. He was shelved for an entire year because he had Tommy John surgery. So you're basically looking at 2 years of a body of work at the professional level, and that body of work has led him to Major League Baseball.
That's pretty
fantastic.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Now, and he's one of those guys that, for as competitive and fiery as he was on the field, you would talk to him off the field, and it just very kind of soft-spoken. Didn't lack confidence or anything, but you could just tell he's one of those players that when you get into the actual competitive environment, his motor was as hot as there was.
Very level-headed.
Yep. And on a day, and even yesterday, as we reflected on a tournament championship for Nebraska baseball, you start drawing comparisons to the last time Nebraska won a title, and that was that regular season title, 21 team where Spencer was a big part of. That was a common team trait as well, is they were just unflappable. And then think about the environment that you have at Baum Stadium in Fayetteville. You've got to be in the moment, and you got to be able to block out a lot of that the external noise and pressures that come with playing at a place like that, where people, we all know that the Mojo Hagee story, where he was a crowd favorite, and maybe not the way that he wanted to be a crowd favorite there in Arkansas, but
it did seem like he was loving it a little bit.
I think so. And if you knew Mojo, you knew those types of things. He's only going to feast off of that. But there were more than just a handful of guys on that team that seemed to relish that moment. Talking to Josh Caron yesterday, I think you saw a little bit of that just hearing from Josh Caron and how they approached being humiliated in the Big Ten tournament to Ohio State, and the way that they were able to bounce back not only the next day. And this was something I didn't bring up yesterday. You bounce back the next day, but no disrespect to Purdue, how truly difficult is it to bounce back the following day when you have your ace going? Knowing that, first of all, an unblemished record, a guy that's been able to give you quality start after quality start after quality start and set the tone time in and time out. You're thinking, all right, now we're playing for our season. We're fine. We got Brett Sears going. It was after that, you start getting deeper into that tournament. And yeah, you could say the same thing about Mason McConaughey. But being able to even go into that Saturday knowing, okay, we think we know what we're going to get out of Will Walsh, but we're not sure. Will Walsh has been a little bit up and down this year. We think, and here's the other big one, Drew Christo. You're getting Drew Christo that night game against Indiana. I'm not trying to say the team didn't believe in him, but when you go off of the body of work of Drew Christo, it's been a little bit more mixed. Now, this year's been a lot more successful than previous years. But again, as you start putting a little bit of miles on your team, as you're lasting longer in the tournament, to continue to persevere and go out there, setting the tone the way that they did, to me, that was more impressive than just being able to bounce back immediately from that Ohio State game, because you had your answer that day. You knew what you had going that day. It was the following games that I think maybe spoke more about what this team is made of and kind of what Josh Caron was talking about yesterday with the way that they approach each game with a balanced approach. I think that's probably more evident Friday and Saturday than it necessarily was on Wednesday, because I think it's easy knowing we got our guy going, we're fine. We're going to win this game. But are we going to be able to parlay that into multiple wins to get us into Sunday and then win that game?
But now our backs are against the wall again, and we may not necessarily have as sure of a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the camaraderie and the confidence in each other it became very evident, especially after that Purdue game, those last few games, that they really do buy in and they really do believe in one another.
It is reminiscent to that 21 team and Spencer Schwellenbach team. And the reason we bring that up, obviously, if you're just tuning in to Spencer Schwellenbach getting the call up to the Atlanta Braves. I haven't seen now. Their starting pitcher is still listed, I believe, as TBA. Not sure if he's getting the start for the Braves or if he's coming out of the bullpen.
As of when I checked 30 minutes ago, he is listed as the probable starter.
Okay, so he is the probable starter. So there you go. And the other question is, will this be a spot start for him, or does he have a chance to stick with the roster? I think the short answer to that, Peter, would be depends on how he does, right?
Yeah.
I mean, his performance today is going to go a long way in determining whether Spencer Schwellenbach is up with Atlanta for a while, because Strider's not coming back.
And this is not how the Braves envision things going.
No.
So there's a lot of question marks and a lot of roster spots that are up for grabs. So
I think it's a great opportunity more than anything. Yeah, I mean, you look at, even Chris Sale, are you confident that he's going to be able to go through the rest of the season without injuries? He's having an injury-plagued career as well. So any arm that you can get, and that doesn't mean Spencer Schwellenbach has to just shove for 7 or 8 innings and win. But if he's shown effectiveness, and this is a guy that got promoted from high A to double A, he completely overstepped triple A to be in this position, to have that opportunity. If you just show effectiveness for a staff that's trying to find some answers and try to solidify what they currently have around the Strider injury, this is a great opportunity for Spencer Schwellenbach. So hoping the very best. But yeah, he was part of that group in 21. Very confident, very even keel. The bouts of adversity that they had, they were able to overcome that. Everybody remembers when they were in the regional host conversation. It was the weekend of, that was the spring game weekend, I believe. And they got swept at home by Rutgers. And then so they were essentially out of the regional hosting conversation. And you're wondering, okay, this is the beginning of the end of the season. It was really cool to watch. And then now they're just going to have this backslide. They didn't. They bounced back. They went out to Rutgers. And remember, they had to play in those pods because that was during COVID.
Yep.
They had to play Indiana and Rutgers, and they beat Indiana. They had one of the craziest wins against Rutgers it was just a bizarre Monday. I'll never forget that one. And that was a team that showed resiliency. And I think that's what this team currently, this Nebraska team, Big Ten tournament champions, have shown too. There's some commonalities there for sure. So, but again, congrats to Spencer Schwellenbach. That's awesome. Excited to see how he does. I know there's going to be a lot of Nebraska fans tuning in to see him in his major league debut. Hour number 2, we're going to get into some commonality, speaking of which, of the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you are to make that ever so difficult climb out of a 3-0 hole, what are some of the things that you need to do? And is there any blueprint for that? Well, there's none in the NBA because it's never happened. And the most notable one that we remember, I want to say in recent time, even though it was now 20 years ago, is the Boston Red Sox being down 3-0 to the New York Yankees, coming from behind, winning that, and then leading them to that World Series that had them in the dumps in the long-chased World Series title and that title drought. I mean, all the demons were exercised. Not saying that Minnesota is going to do it, but if you're going to do it, there's a couple things you have to have that Boston did that I think maybe Minnesota has too. We'll get to that here in a moment. Also getting back to the Nebraska football conversation. Still to come on the show too. Kyle Peterson at 8 o'clock. We're going to talk some college football. Bill Bender at 9 and Brandon Vogel of Counter Read at 9:45 as we continue here on 1620 The Zone.
Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone and 1620thezone.com with Gary Sharp and Nick Handley. Live from the Host Coffee Studio, this is 1620 The Zone. 1620 The Zone. Traffic.
From the Pyramid Roofing Time Saving Traffic Center. No accidents reported in the Omaha Metro, but we got slow goings picking up on westbound I-80 between Giles and 144th and on eastbound Dodge from I-680 to 90th. A reminder that Millard Ave is closed in both directions between 144th and U due to road construction. Also, northbound 72nd between F and I-80 still closed due to bridge work, so if you want to get on the interstate, you have to take either 84th or 60th, and Center Street still closed due to utility work between 72nd and 60th. Be sure to buckle up, drive safe out there. I'm Joey Colbert.
This time-saving traffic was brought to you by Fernando's.
Mario Street Tacos or steak and chorizo queso blanco enchiladas can only be found in one place. Fernando's. Great Mexican food, awesome margaritas, and a wonderful family atmosphere. Fernando's, Omaha's favorite Mexican for more than 30 years.
Hey, Brianna, look at you, graduating already.
Yeah, knocked out my gen eds in 2 years at MCC.
And now you're off to
Finish my 4-year degree at the university.
That was fast. I'll bet your mom
Loves that. We saved thousands in tuition.
Now that's smart.
That's Metropolitan Community College.
Knock out your gen eds in 2 years before transferring to a 4-year university. Get started at mccneb.edu/me. Classes start June 5th.
This is me at MCC.
The Zone Hotline is powered by 42 Degrees, The Source, by your mom's house.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential, but finding those people can be a major hassle, unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. And right now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/radio. With ZipRecruiter, one click sends your job to hundreds of top job sites. But more than that, ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies the candidates with the skills you need, sends you a list of great matches to review, then actively invites them to apply for your job. And the results speak for themselves. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. That's right, the first day. Now you can focus on your business and let ZipRecruiter do the work finding the best people for you. See for yourself. Experience the ease, efficiency, and power of ZipRecruiter for free. Just go to ziprecruiter.com/radio. That's ziprecruiter.com/radio. ziprecruiter.com/radio.
If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has plans built just for you. Like 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings versus Verizon and AT&T. Experience all this and more on America's largest 5G network. At T-Mobile, customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. Switch today.
With AutoPay using Denver bank account plus taxes and fees, 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary. See details.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide cleans better than the leading competitive free detergent, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues.
Plus, Tide Free and Gentle has no dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on her skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
For the second year, the Nebraska Lottery's NASCAR Powerball Playoff promotion has roared into our state, and the excitement is throttling up. Until June 24th, buy a Powerball ticket with Power Play and Double Play. Enter the voucher number, and you could be one of 15 Nebraska winners of $1,000 and the chance to win a VIP trip to the NASCAR Cup Series Championship Weekend, plus a shot at $1 million. Enter today. Powerball top prize odds 1 in 292 million.
Tickets for less. Best seats, best prices, no service fees. Shop ticketsforless.com. KOZN Bellevue, Omaha, Council Bluffs. This is 1620 The Zone. And we're back. Mornings with Sharp and Handley. Here's Gary, Nick, and Jimmy on 1620 The Zone.
Update time. Let's
Inform us.
Get to it. Timberwolves, they are staying alive. They win 105-100 in Dallas to force a Game 5 back in Minneapolis. And notably, this ended Kyrie Irving's perfect record in closeout playoff games. Previously 14-0, now 14-1.
And the Wolves are now 3-0 in elimination games, including their last 2 on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
The resilient Wolves. If anyone could take this thing the distance, I would not bet against them.
It's bold, though. It's never happened.
And on the hockey side of things, Panthers overtime victory. They have tied the East Finals at 2 games apiece. Series shifting back to New York. We were talking about this earlier. This just has the vibe, the feel. Too close to call. This is probably going 7. Same with the Western Conference Finals.
Mm-hmm.
That Game 4 is tonight. Brink and Clark. Fever versus Sparks. We got the first matchup of that duo last night. The Sparks came out on top 88-82, but we finally had what we envisioned when Caitlin Clark was drafted. She had a very Caitlin Clark game, career high in the WNBA, 30 points in the losing effort. Brink ending up with just 3 points. A little surprising there, but
yeah,
a lot of what she brings may not always show up on the box score.
Yeah, what are her rebounds and block stats? That's what you need to know.
That's the important stuff with such a giant presence there. She is going to be.
She's lengthy.
She is going to be a very good player in that league for a while.
Yeah.
As of yesterday, officially, the Negro League stats have been added to the MLB history books. And it did result in a few changes in some categories. Josh Gibson now is the all-time single-season leader in batting average, slugging, and OPS.
Mm-hmm.
So that is pretty cool to see that integrated into the same record books.
Yeah, well-deserved, I believe.
Very. And we just got done talking about it. Former Husker Spencer Schwellenbach is getting the call, and he will be starting for the Braves tonight, officially listed as the probable starter against the Nationals. Congrats to him. And a weird occurrence yesterday at the Twins-Royals game. That's not rain. It's a cottonwood storm.
Yeah. Have you guys noticed that here, too, locally? It would have been last Wednesday, I believe. I was driving by. This would have been out in the Fort Ida area. And, where Stone Creek Golf Course is. One of the tee boxes looked like it was completely covered with cotton. I mean, it was blowing everywhere.
I feel like this particular time of the year, I have seen much more cotton than usual. And
that was a weird scene last night, though.
And the Royals broadcast said we were expecting scattered showers, but I've never quite seen something like this where it's raining only from the area of home plate to the pitcher's mound. It's pouring.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that just doesn't look consistent, like rain consistency. It looked very white and almost too thick to be rain. And then I found out it was just cottonwood blowing around everywhere. And that made a lot more sense to me than just having one area of the ballpark getting poured on. But yeah, very strange. I've never seen that on a broadcast.
Yeah, that was odd. But I immediately thought about what we've been seeing here locally, too. I'm like, okay.
My nose would have been on fire. I would have been sneezing everywhere.
Oh, are you allergic?
It just that if that stuff gets anywhere near my face, it just
okay.
Not fun.
Well, stay away from Northwestern Omaha. Northwest Omaha has had a lot of that, I've noticed. Yeah, to the point that it was actually covering like an entire tee box over at Stone Creek a week ago. I was like, oh.
Clear the cotton.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So there we have it.
All right, thank you, Peter. I'm going to get into some more Nebraska football here in just a little bit. The Big Ten futures odds are out when it comes to the odds to win the championship, that is, to win the Big Ten title. Now, I will give you this one tease. Nebraska does not have the best odds. But where do they fall in the order of all of the other teams behind essentially Ohio State? It is Ohio State with the best odds at plus 160. But where's Nebraska? We'll get into that a little bit later. So I was thinking back last night, You mentioned the Wolves winning, Kyrie's run coming to an end, but also, and not the fact that he's done playing, but the Minnesota ability to stave off elimination now. They've done it 3 times in this postseason. They've done the last 2 on the road. They get a much-needed win yesterday, obviously, to keep your season alive. But the way that they do it, and you mentioned yesterday, and this was a big part of the game, Lively, who was not in action, and by all indications, he could potentially be available. But it sounds like, and especially with where the series is right now, they would like to hold him out until the finals. That sounds like that's what they would, in a perfect world, like to do. But his Lively's injury is strange because
it looked incredibly painful.
Well, and he's not in concussion protocol, which I mean, it looked like he looked woozy.
Yeah,
when he got up, but it's
categorized as a neck sprain.
Yeah, it's essentially whiplash. It basically is what he has. He has whiplash, and so he was able to sit on the bench yesterday. It looked like he was able to turn his head fine, which those are all you would think very good signs. But I think Gafford's a stud, but I think Derek Lively's their best pick. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't watch them all season long. But what I've seen from him, and they're not going to change this. It's not like all of a sudden he's going to be the starter when he's able to be, cleared. But his role right now is a great one. But I think by this time next year, I would say Derek Lively is your starting big. But that's a conversation again for another day and maybe next year. But that was a big part of it, of the success that Minnesota had. You also had the big 2 for Dallas outperformed by the big 2 of Minnesota. Cat and Ant-Man, I think 9 points better than Luka and Kyrie. They also decided to throw Ant-Man on Luka defensively. Luka had a bad day. He had a bad game. To his standard, to what we're used to seeing Luka have, he had a bad game. If you factor in all of those things, no Derek Lively, Luka had an off night. Kyrie struggled a little bit as well. And yet you were still, you weren't blown out. You lost by 5. I can look at it from the standpoint of you still don't feel awful about it. Like Luka going, how many times is Luka going to go 7 for 21? Kyrie Irving, between Kyrie and Luka, you're shooting well below 40% there. That's not going to happen every night. Now, the Lively factor, I would say, is more doubtful for Thursday. But if you get this thing tightened back up and you go back to Dallas, okay, then maybe we see Derek Lively. And let's say, Peter, if he plays on Thursday, if he's active on Thursday, how active is he going to be?
I wonder if he even would start in that situation. Maybe just limited bench minutes at that point. Right. I'm with you though. I think the only scenario I see him reappearing in this series is if we get to that game 7.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be not. I wouldn't label it a doomsday scenario, but breaking case of emergency. Right. If he's well enough to go, if it got to that point, I think they would use him there. Well, but I do not envision him being used in 5 and 6 if it gets there.
So, no Blake Lively, Kyrie, Luka. They go 13 of 39, I believe it is what it was. 13 of 39. Luka put up 28 points. Again, it was being outdone by Anthony Edwards, 29, and Karl Anthony Towns, 25.
Plus 15 for Karl.
Yep. And that's that big part of this conversation too is Karl Anthony Towns, who in the first half, some of the more wild fouls that he likes to commit to, didn't have a great first half. And this kind of goes to my point about why Minnesota shouldn't be completely cast aside, even with getting the win. So look at a couple of factors right now. They go back home on Thursday. So at this point of the remainder, however long this series goes, they've got home court advantage. That was the big part about winning Game 4 on the road. Now you go back home where you haven't won against Dallas. You would assume, just like we assumed yesterday, Minnesota's not going to get swept. Well, now you go back home. You have a chance playing in front of your crowd. You win that one. All of a sudden, this thing gets really interesting because then you go back to Dallas. But if there is a Game 7, that comes right back to Minnesota. So at this point, I mean, you started this series with home court advantage. Now the remainder of it, you still have that home court advantage. That's a big part of it. This is not to say Dallas might just end things on Thursday, but looking at where they won that game last night was huge because now you have a chance to go back. Then there's the youth factor of this team where maybe they're just naive enough to not understand that teams don't do this. Teams will not come back. Yes, teams will be down 3-0 and maybe scratch out a game or two, but are not going to come all the way back. Minnesota's got a little bit of that young, brash cockiness, but also a little bit of that naive, we have never really been here, so we don't buy into all of what the percentages say in this one.
Why can't we rattle off 4 in a row?
Absolutely. We're just playing ball. And all of these games, that's the other part, is all of these games have been extremely competitive. It's not like either team has blown the other one out. So a couple of tweaks here and there, and I'll get to their defense a little bit later. I start drawing comparisons to the 2004 Boston Red Sox win. And what was it called? 4 days in October, 4 days in November, whatever it was. There was a 30 for 30 on the Boston Red Sox come back against the Yankees. And I remember Kevin Millar was the one guy that was just championing the phrase, "Don't let us win today. Don't let us win today. You better eliminate us today." And then he started laying out the scenario, what they had in front of them. If you don't eliminate us today, better not let us win today. We've got so-and-so going this game. Then we got this guy going this game. They had the path mapped out. Before yesterday's game, I saw Brian Windhorst tweeting this out. Anthony Edwards, who you expect to be confident even when you're on the brink of elimination, before the game yesterday, during warmups, was saying essentially the exact same thing. You better put us away today. Dallas better put us away today. Again, a little bit of that young cockiness, a little bit of that brash, not understanding the full gravity of it, trying to, even though all the pressure in the world is on Minnesota, trying to put that pressure on Dallas, trying to speak that into existence. Just like when the Yankees, the mighty Yankees that were built to win championships every year, and very buttoned up, different approach to it, while the Red Sox were just kind of untucked, sloppy, just a bunch of dudes enjoying being around each other, trying to stir the pot any way that they could. Very similar with Minnesota, where you're trying to flip the narrative of all the pressure being on you, which would make sense. You're one game away from elimination, to now flipping that narrative on the other team of, yeah, I get it. You guys are up 3 games done, but you better do it today. Because if you don't, we start getting momentum. We start waking up. We start all of a sudden believing, and we're a young enough, feisty enough team that you don't want to leave hanging around. It's kind of that 15 versus 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. You start hanging around there late in the second half, they believe they're going to win, and you start feeling the pressure. All of a sudden, Peter, Thursday becomes a huge game because you know it won't just be Anthony Edwards. Cat will sit. And he is just a very interesting dude.
Yeah.
Very interesting dude. But guys like McDaniels, Gobert, all of a sudden they start saying a similar thing. Yep, Dallas, you better put us away tonight. Better get it done on the road. You don't want to come back to Dallas where we're 1 game away from evening this thing up. And so again, you start putting the pressure. That's the one burden that comes with being up 3-0. Now, in the Boston-Indiana series, you could do that all you wanted to if you're Indiana, but at the end of the day, you still didn't have Tyrese Haliburton. I mean, you got to have the ammo to back it up. And in this case, Minnesota at least has their guys. And the other part about it is these games have been close. But I look at the way that Red Sox team, there was just that, screw this. We already know everyone has written us off. Let's just have fun with this thing. Let's start throwing it back at them. And let's see if, first of all, we got to respond on our own end. We got to do our thing. But let's see if we can get them a little tight. And you took care of the very first task, and that is to extend the series. Okay, you didn't get swept, and this thing is now going back home. Those are two key elements. So you do that. You hope that home court advantage on Thursday can propel you to all of a sudden make it 3-2, because then if that happens, I guarantee you the Mavericks are going back home. First of all, pissed off they're going back home, that there's a game 6. Yeah. But now all of a sudden you got a Minnesota team that's going to be jawing even a little bit more. All right, now you're home. Now you better put us away.
We know we can win here. We did it 2 games ago.
It's just the way that they're talking and going about it, very similar to the way that Boston did that. And again, I go back to, that was the other thing about Boston is you had Big Papi, who was a postseason legend in that run. You had some very good pitching performances. Of course, everybody remembers the bloody sock with Curt Schilling. But, Pedro gives you some good stuff as well. Was it Falk as well? He was great. There were so many good things that they had going on. So they had a team that could back it up. You had a good team. Minnesota's a good team. The fact that they got down 3-0 was very surprising. Okay, that's not to take anything away from what Dallas has been able to do in the series, but there is that dynamic of this Dallas team that, again, you have sort of a grumpy Luka Doncic when things aren't going well. He gets very animated. Kyrie every now and then has shown that propensity. Although I will say this about Kyrie, he seems as happy as he's been in any NBA uniform right now. Maybe you have to go all the way back to when he was with Cleveland. When he realized he didn't want to be a number 2. He didn't want to be a Robin. But he looks as content as I've seen him in a long time. But even he has that propensity to get a little bit fired up. Sometimes you can get under his skin, if you will. I just feel like this Minnesota team is going to push every button like I think the Red Sox did against the Yankees in 2004. I'm not saying this is going to happen. In fact, I would still say 80% chance. Hell, I'll go 85% chance that Dallas wraps this thing up by Saturday, by next week. By this weekend. But if there was a team to do it, and you look at what happened last night and what is being said in trying to take being on the brink of elimination and flip that to where all the pressure is being put on the team that's up 3-0, now up 3-1, and trying to make them feel the pressure, and then being able to go about the way you play with a defensive style that's a little bit unique, can be very tiring, I think, on the Wolves, which I do think there is some fatigue there, but they continue to change, make subtle tweaks here and there. That putting Ant on Doncic, I think, was a good move. Will they have enough in the tank if they do get to, a 6 or a 7? I don't know, but if you're looking for the origin of how you make that improbable comeback, I think you saw a small example, some commonalities as we saw with the Red Sox and the Yankees.
And I think if any coach in the NBA who is in this position, any fan base, you are tasked with overcoming this mountain, and you need one player who you could label as the so-and-so professional button pusher.
Yep. Oh, and that's easily Anthony Edwards.
Professional intimidator, get in the head of the opponent. I think a vast majority of responses would be Anthony Edwards, if not all of them.
Yep. Rudy Gobert can do that every now and then too.
And it's not bad to have them both on the same team.
No.
So, I very much see the connection here.
Yeah. Again, highly unlikely that it happens.
Yeah, this is not a declaration.
I don't want people saying they're gonna come back.
Nick Handley said that they're.
Yeah, I'm still saying 85%. This thing is wrapped up by the weekend. But just keep your eye on how Minnesota's going about their business. I love that they're doing this. I love that they're trying to make Dallas feel the pressure, even though it's Minnesota that's on the brink of elimination. Because if you start to, you get maybe a cold half, and again, I'm looking at you, Luka Doncic. If you get him unhinged a little bit, ooh, they start feasting on that. It becomes must watch. So just keep your eye on that. Just saying. All right, back to the Husker football conversation. Futures odds in the Big Ten. CBS Sports has those out, and we will continue to look at the anonymous breakdowns of Big Ten coaches with their peers and what is being said about Nebraska. How close is Nebraska? Talk about changing the narrative or flipping the narrative. How close is Nebraska to doing that compared to the previous 5-6 years and that overall feel of what Nebraska football was? We'll get into all of that as we continue here on 1620 The Zone.
Gary Sharp, Nick Handley, and Jimmy Chavez. Mornings with Sharp and Handley. Weekdays 6 to 10. On 1620 The Zone and 1620thezone.com. Previously on Unsportsmanlike Conduct.
I read a book about the idea of aliens being a thing.
What is that, a new concept?
Someone
writing about aliens?
No. It talked about if we're going to find aliens, how we hope to find them.
Boy, that sounds like a really exciting book.
It was a great book. I ripped right through it.
Sean, this is why you don't have fun. You don't allow yourself to wonder.
I wonder all the time. I wonder how I've made it this long being next to you two.
Unsportsmanlike Conduct with John Bishop and Josh Peterson. Weekdays 2 to 6 on 1620 The Zone. Your Omaha area forecast from a Godfather's Pizza Weather Center and KETV News Watch 7 on 1620 The Zone.
A fantastic day ahead for Wednesday. Expect mostly sunny skies throughout the day with a southeast breeze, 5 to 15 miles per hour. Borderline top 10 day with highs near 80. I'm meteorologist Sean Everson from KETV News Watch 7.
1620 The Zone. Traffic.
From the Pyramid Roofing Time Saving Traffic Center. No accidents to report in the Omaha Metro, but we got slow goings picking up on westbound I-80 between Giles and 144th and on eastbound Dodge from I-680 to 90th. A reminder that Millard Ave is closed in both directions between 144th and U due to road construction. Also, northbound 72nd between F and I-80 still closed due to bridge work, so if you want to get on the interstate, you'll have to take either 84th or 60th. And Center Street still closed due to utility work between 72nd and 60th. Be sure to buckle up, drive safe out there. I'm Joey Colbert.
This time-saving traffic is brought to you by Saul's Jewelry and Loan.
I have never seen this before. Hi, John with Saul's Jewelry and Loan. The price of gold is the highest it's ever been. Now is the time to get the best price on your broken jewelry, chains, and diamond jewelry. Saul's has been around a while, and trust us, now's the time. Saul's Jewelry and Loan.
Watching a ball game at Oscar's Pizza and Sports Grill is pretty awesome. Oscar's offers the MLB package, so your team is always on their upgraded audio-video system, and nothing is better than watching the game with a cold frosty one, Oscar's Pizza, or award-winning char-buffed wings. And with daily lunch and dinner specials, it's really a no-brainer. So get ready to watch your favorite team play ball at Oscar's Pizza and Sports Grill, 173rd and West Center Road, and takeout at 162nd and Maple.
Runza and the Omaha Storm Chasers team up to play as the Omaha Runzas. Be at Werner Park on Saturday, June 8th for Runza Night. The team takes the field in special jerseys to be auctioned off during the game. Enjoy in-game stadium Runzas for one night only, and the first 1,200 fans will get a special Runza sun hat to help block those summer rays. Get your tickets today at OmahaStormChasers.com.
Omaha Storm Chasers family. Everyone get on your feet, stir up the storm with family. Make the right call. John Higgins Weather Guard, the home of the roofery.
When it's time to replace or repair storm damage, make the right call. John Higgins Weather Guard, the local, trusted, and proven choice. No one has installed more DaVinci roofs, and there's a reason why John Higgins Weather Guard is the nation's leader. Community member, community supporter. Make the right call.
John Higgins Weather Guard, the home of the roofery. Make the right call.
What's holding you back from learning the language you've always wanted to speak?
Too hard.
Takes too long.
Not with Babbel. Babbel's lessons take just 10 minutes a day.
10 minutes isn't long.
Nope. And they're fun.
fun isn't hard.
Right. Babbel's interactive lessons, podcasts, games, and more make languages fun and engaging. You might even forget you're learning. And Babbel's lessons are built around real life. Babbel teaches language skills you'll actually use, about travel, business, relationships, and more. You'll learn what matters most to you. Plus, Babbel's lessons are designed to get you having real conversations in as little as 3 weeks.
Just 3 weeks? Even better.
Since Babbel's lessons are voiced by real native speakers, you'll get pronunciation just right and be able to carry on conversations with confidence.
Learning a language with Babbel doesn't take long.
And with Babbel, it isn't hard.
It's perfect.
Get Babbel. It starts here. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
Don't miss this week's Zone Deal.
This week's half-off deal are coupons valued at $50 on sale for just $25 to the Woodcliff Restaurant at Woodcliff Lake in Fremont. It's perfect for a romantic dinner or to bring the whole family to enjoy a culinary treat for any special occasion. $50 on sale for just $25 to the Woodcliff Restaurant at Woodcliff Lake in Fremont. This week's half-off deal.
Zone deals go fast. 9 a.m. Friday, 1620thezone.com. Now back to mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone.
A big thank you to Athlon Sports of putting this out every year. The Big Ten coaches talking anonymously about their conference foes for 2024. Let's get right to it on Nebraska and what is said about the Huskers. In year 2 for Matt Rule, this coming from a coach that has Nebraska and Matt Rule on their schedule for 2024. Who might it be? That's always the fun part. Who does this sound like? Well, this is what was said about Nebraska. They're going to break through this year. It's just a question of how big. They should definitely be bowling. It's all about the quarterback. They've tried to slow play it as much as possible, but he's clearly their best option. To talk about Dylan Raiola, the most talented, the guy who makes the system work. Matt Rule's done a great job of reworking the offensive talent. They're going to have some breakout wide receivers, and they have a really deep group of running backs. Tony White is going to be a head coach soon, but getting him back for another year is huge for them. I thought the shift to the 3-3 worked out really well for them, and they're starting to look like old or legendary Nebraska with the size and talent up front on defense. That was said about Nebraska. Who said that? Well, if you remember when this was done before, last year, and I'm paraphrasing the crap out of this, so bear with me. I believe there was intrigue of what Matt Rule inherited and what type of team he would put out there, but it seemed like the breakdown last year was there was confidence that Matt Rule is the right man for the job. But as far as throwing out any type of expectations or throwing out any type of definitive season 1 proclamations, if I remember correctly, they stopped short of that. And I think even went as far as saying it might take a little bit. Now fast forward to this year where quarterbacks brought up, Dylan Raiola brought up. Tony White and being able to retain him as a DC is brought up. I thought one of the more interesting takeaways, again, from a Big Ten coaching peer that has Nebraska on the schedule, is talking about the overall size of this team and talking about what they have up front on defense, saying looking like old or legendary Nebraska with the size and talent up front on defense. It's amazing in just 1 year in a team that was a game shy of a bowl game, you get that type of, and again, you take these for what they are. And we've told you many times what they are. And I saw a lot of these this year seem to be a little bit more positive than overly critical. But it's interesting when you think back to the previous coaching staff and what seemed to be a consistent theme with that team as far as how they were looked at by other coaching staffs in the Big Ten. And that was a team that looked the part. I remember being described as the all-bus team, meaning they would come off the bus and you're like, damn, These guys look athletic. You've got some long physical players in certain positions. They looked the part, and then you got them on the field, and you wondered why the heck they couldn't stay disciplined for an entire 4 quarters. Yep. All of the different mistakes. And it always seemed like, without even saying, and I think one year they actually did say, whoever was pegged to break down Nebraska for Athlon had mentioned that Scott Frost should be on the hot seat or would be on the hot seat. A lot of that analysis usually steered back to the head coach. And this is where we get into, I think, and Peter, you might disagree with me, but this is where I think we get into a very tricky conversation around here when it comes to any type of preseason chatter that is optimistic about the upcoming season, because that's just what we do. I am married to a Chicago Cub fan, and her family are fans. And there's always that internal optimism. I mean, this is obviously before they won the World Series in 2016. There's always that eternal optimism of this will be the year, this will be the year, this will be the year. And I think there was a large section of Nebraska fans that would always laugh at that notion of, the hell are you guys talking about? Because every year was not the year, but a very solid year. And then it wasn't. And then it wasn't again. And then it wasn't again. And then all of a sudden, you went from, at the very least, we can define overachievement in different ways, but at the very least, you were going to have a successful season when it came to a win-loss record. And on your greatest years of overachievement, typically would lead you to a game that was deciding either a national championship or a conference title, whatever it might be. Again, I think everybody's expectation varies when it came to achievement or overachievement back in those days. Now, when you look at the conversation of, hey, this could be the year, it's not necessarily saying this could be the year that, it's not. This could be the year Nebraska wins a national title. Is it crazy to think this is the year, this could be the year of what? Getting back to a bowl game? Boy, those aren't the most lofty expectations. You got to,
but in the context of the last decade,
got to crawl before
who
you can
wouldn't
walk.
take that?
I know. Yet it wasn't that. I mean, it was. I guess we're far enough removed to where just getting to a bowl game. I'll never forget the 2002 7-7 season, where when that happened, you're like, what the hell is this crap? What is this? First of all, they played 14 games. That's pretty crazy. But 7 wins? That's it? 7 losses? What the hell is this? It was mind-blowing. Yet now, if you look at a 7-win season, which that's sort of the number that I've dialed in on in 2024, 7-5 would be a heck of a year to jump. But the last few years of always having that eternal optimism, because that's what it is. It's become kind of similar to the Chicago Cubs pre-World Series title of you're blindly following what everyone else is saying, and you're tuning out the red flags. I'll give Amy Just a lot of credit last year. Amy Just was one of the few members of the media that did not have Nebraska going to a bowl game. And I remember her getting a lot of crap for that. And she turned out to be right. And we've gotten ourselves into that headspace of we don't want to acknowledge what could be legitimate red flags. We don't want to acknowledge any narrative or any context that keeps that minimum win total of 6 or 6 or less. We're only interested in the conversations of 6 or greater. And that to me that's that internal optimism of however you define success right now. And I would think it's getting yourself, I think 6-6 could have some holes in it. I know that sounds crazy. It's like, well, hell, you're going to a bowl game. Be happy with that. You're right. But 6-6 with this schedule, with the type of team that I really do think they have, especially on the defensive side, like that anonymous coach said, I think you want to put yourself in a position from going to 5 to 7. I think that is I still think that's a modest jump.
It's not a unrealistic jump.
Right. But is that overall conversation that we have, it gets, especially from a lot of other fan bases, and I know our friends across the river will roll their eyes too. It's that conversation when we start talking about what Nebraska could do, and you see positive things being said about this team by a member of a coaching staff that has Nebraska on their roster. And then you hear a lot of the national love. Joel Klatt having Nebraska in his top 25. Other national pundits looking at Nebraska either creeping into a possible preseason top 25 or at least on the outside looking in, but not too far away. That you feel like every national media member that talks highly of Nebraska in the preseason, they always give you the caveat of, I tend to do this every year. I tend to fall for it every year. But this is why I really do think there's substance to it. This is where I say the Matt Rule effect does have substance. For a coach that's coming off of a 5-7 season, for a coach that if you pay attention to what he does around what he says, there is a lot of follow through. Never once last year going into the season did Matt Rule say, yeah, we're going to be a bowl team. We're going to be 6-6. We're going to be 7-5. No, he never said that. And he's still not saying that right now. But what he talks about followed with the action that how they pursue roster improvement, how they have every coach from a developmental standpoint. And you could see even in 1 year where there was some development in some key areas. There's action behind the words. I think that is, to me, I think when you look at the roster, you look at the guys that are coming back from a year ago and how they performed a year ago, and now having another year in the system, whether we're talking about the defensive side or in the offensive side, that there is confidence between not only the coach's reputation, but also watching what's happening in the now. That's what I think is important more than anything. I think there are a lot of coaches that will get the flyer because of what they've done in the past. And you say, well, it worked here and it worked there. So naturally, at this current spot, you just have to trust that they're going to get it done. Yeah, sure, there are coaches that have earned that. But I'm not interested in that anymore. I'm interested in what is happening in the now. And when I look at how they have orchestrated this roster, but I also look at, I think the point about Tony White is a very good one, that you're able to keep one of the better defensive coordinators, I think, in college football. You're able to keep him around. It's clearly a guy that this defensive staff, they look up to. That was a huge win for them. Almost every member of the defensive side of the football, when they were interviewed during spring ball, all of them talked about having Tony White back and how that meant to them. And there's talent on that side. Gary says this a lot. I know Verz has brought this up a lot when we talk to him. So I'm not trying to beat a dead horse on it, but these are all those factors that I think you can look to year two, and it's okay to be optimistic. Dare I say bold with what you think is going to happen. The simplicity of having adults in the room. The simplicity of knowing that just because I'm here doesn't mean everything's just going to fall into place because I'm here. Now I'm here, I've got to take advantage of everything that we have working for us, including the very highly competitive conference that we're in, but also the resources that we have available. And that's not just facilities, but that's the modern game of name, image, likeness. Everything that comes with how you compete in 2024 in college football, that they've leaned into it all, but they have not ignored the things that made all of these coaches, but especially Matt Rule, successful in previous stops. So there's still the identity that he's always going to have as a coach and developing and being able to really build up the rank and file of the roster. So when you have your top end of the roster, you're developing them and you're tightening the screws on those guys, but you're also seeing major strides by the rank and file by your lower half, that all of a sudden you have that depth. You know, those are the things to me that's happening right now. That's why I say reputation on what a coach has done in previous spots, and now we're in year two where that coach has had a lot of jumps. That's fine. But I'm more interested in what is happening right now. I want to see evidence that year two can be good like it was in previous stops. I want to see what they're doing right now to make that, without having even seen a game in year 2, making me feel confident that they're doing everything in their power to make this thing more successful than it was a year ago. And I think there's a lot of examples of that. I think we've thrown some of those examples out there, but I think there's also things that we probably don't even know about right now. They take this blank serious. They do.
They do.
And I know it sounds crazy. Like, well, every coach in Power 5, Power 4 football does or should. Yeah, you're right.
To certain degrees.
Exactly. But we've seen the other side of that before, where put the arms back. All right, we'll figure this out. We're going to be fine. No, there's action involved. Action involved. That's why I wonder, in the narrative of Nebraska football amongst other Big Ten coaches, if you talk to all of them, again, this was one coach from a coaching staff's account. If you talk to all of them, if there's a very consistent feel of, damn, keep your eye on what's going on in Lincoln. They've got a quarterback. They've got a guy that shows a lot of promise at that position. Obviously, they got to protect him. He's got to develop as well. He's got to make that step from being a dominant player at the high school level to at the collegiate level. So he's got to fulfill some expectations, and that's going to come down to how they support him.
And there's going to be some growing pains.
Absolutely there are. But you've got especially a defensive line that is as good as you've had in a very long time, led by a defensive coordinator that is fantastic. You've got an offensive line that it finally needs to be a source of strength. But guys that have played a lot of college football and are playing on that side of the football with, again, and go back to how they handle the offensive line. And when you have a guy like Donovan Raiola, who got the vote of confidence from Matt Rule, there's something about Donovan that he really liked, wanted to keep him around. And you hear all of those offensive linemen speak the world of him, so highly about him. That area needs to be a lot better. But again, there's experience there. There's always, sure, there's question marks on every spot when you look at wide receiver. Looks like they're going to have some breakout wide receivers, but we're going to see that. But then again, you start looking at development too. Running backs. That'll be interesting. I think that's still an area of, okay, what exactly do we expect out of that? But as far as the way that they go about their business, from their culture to development and the connection these coaches have with each of their position groups, there's a lot there to feel good about. A lot there that you say, hey, it all seems to be on the table. Now let's see if it's prepared to its fullest, which I think it's got a shot to. Going to take a quick break. We'll come right back. Also, Kyle Peterson of ESPN are going to talk all about the NCAA baseball tournament gets underway this weekend, including that matchup with Nebraska and Florida. KP will be joining us at 8 o'clock here on 1620 The Zone.
Mornings with Sharp and Handley returns in minutes on 1620 The Zone. For the Jays, the Huskers, and even you Jayskers, we are 1620 The Zone.
I'm Dave Osted. And I'm Ryan Osted. Every golfer will get value from being custom fit. The truth is, the higher handicappers will get more value from being custom fit than the low handicappers.
It's changed so much since my dad started the business in 1963. We now have hundreds of thousands of dollars in technology, and we know exactly what the spin rate is, what the launch angle is. We encourage you to bring your current clubs in now, and we can compare it. And guys walk out of the store knowing that the purchase they just made is going to give them 21 more yards off the tee box. Play better, have fun, and shop Osted's.
Hey, it's John and Josh here for the FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs have tipped off, but there's still lots of time to get in on the action with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just place one winning $5 bet. You get $150 in bonus bucks to use on same-game parlays, live bets, even championship futures, and a whole lot more. Because there is no better place to bet all NBA playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. So go to FanDuel.com/1620 and get started
So like John said, just go to FanDuel.com/1620 and new customers, again, you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 that you can use on a variety of props. It's FanDuel.com/1620. 21 plus and present in Iowa. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit is required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-BETS-OFF.
Hey, baseball fans, join the Blur Tailgate at Hilton Omaha this June for our 12th annual hospitality event during the College Baseball Championship Series. Book an experience for your clients or employees with an inclusive bar, buffet, TVs, music, and tailgate games. Secure your spot today and let Blur Events take care of all the work so you can enjoy the day. Plus, we're just steps away from Charles Schwab Field. Visit blurevents.com to book your group, buy tickets, or learn about sponsorships. That's blurevents.com, your college baseball and football tailgate destination.
Forget the drive to Colorado or Missouri. Step into any Omaha 42 Degrees and indulge in a curated cannabis experience. Premium flower, cannabis, pre-rolls, and cannabis accessories paired with an elevated customer service experience. All are waiting for you at 42 Degrees. From novices to connoisseurs, we're here to elevate your cannabis journey. 42 Degrees, your destination for top-tier cannabis, second to none product selection, and exceptional service. By your mom's house.
This time-saving traffic was brought to you by Fernando's.
Spring, it's the reward for surviving another winter. Fernando's, it's the reward for any day that ends in Y. Great Mexican food, awesome margaritas, and a wonderful family atmosphere. Fernando's, Omaha's favorite Mexican for more than 30 years.
Man, I loved playing high school sports growing up. And it's fun being a fan now, don't get me wrong, but sitting in the stands feels like I'm missing out on all the action, you know? I wanted to get back in the game, so I signed up to be a high school official. It takes me back to my playing days. I'm supporting students, and I get paid to make the big calls. Do you want to see the game up close? Sign up to become an official in Nebraska at highschoolofficials.com.
Are you the decision maker in your company? Consider this. For the first time in decades, there's a better option for a corporate card and spend management platform. Meet Ramp, the only corporate card and spend management system designed to help you spend less money so you can make more. Most corporate credit cards offer points as incentives, but those points amount to less than their worth in real cash value. Ramp's business cards offer you cash back, real money in your pocket. Plus, you control who spends what with each vendor. And Ramp's software collects and verifies receipts automatically, which means you'll stop wasteful spending and close your books in hours instead of days. Businesses that use Ramp add up to 5% to their bottom line the first year. If you're a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. And now get $250 when you join Ramp for free. Just go to ramp.com/sports. Ramp.com/sports. RAMP.com/sports.
Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply.
Now back to mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone.
Going to be talking college baseball, Nebraska, Florida, regional action, all of that coming up with Kyle Peterson of ESPN. He will be joining us here in about 5 minutes. But real quickly, saw this come across yesterday, the payouts for EA Sports when it comes to each school is going to be tier-based. And top tiers are getting essentially $100,000, just a shade under. Tier 2 gets basically 60,000. Tier 3 right around 40,000, and tier 4 just under 10,000. And this formula is not based on strictly the popularity of how many people they think will actually play the game and will use that team in playing the game. They use a format of top 25 finishes over the past 10 years. And by that model alone, Peter, can you guess where Nebraska would be between tier 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Give me the lowest tier.
That is correct. So not necessarily the most lucrative payout to the University of Nebraska and its athletic department from EA Sports when it comes to the college football, the unveiling of the college football game. The University of Nebraska will receive $9,987.52 compared to tier 1 teams that'll be getting just under $100,000. And if you are to put Nebraska in a category with other schools, again, think about the popularity of using Nebraska in a video game as opposed to what they've actually accomplished on the field. The Tier 4 programs, they're joined by Cal, Rutgers, Maryland, Purdue, and pretty much 95% of Mid-America Conference schools. Yeah. And then to dig the knife in just a little bit more, you know who else is also Tier 1? Iowa.
Very humbling.
Yeah.
Very humbling.
There you go, Iowa. There's your good news for the day. Right there. Brian Ferentz couldn't screw that one up for you.
Payday.
That's right. Enjoy your $100,000. All right, coming up, college baseball. Everything about the regionals, including huge matchup between Florida, Jack Caglione, and your Nebraska Cornhuskers. We will get into that conversation on the other side of the break with KP.
Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone and 1620thezone.com. Live from the Host Coffee Studio, this is 1620 The Zone. 1620 The Zone. Traffic.
From the Pyramid Roofing Time Saving Traffic Center, we got tons of heavy traffic in the Omaha Metro. Slow goings on northbound JFK from Chandler to the I-80, I-40 interchange. Also on westbound I-80 from 42nd to 72nd and from Giles to Harrison. And on eastbound I-80 from I-680 to 84th. There's slow goings on northbound I-680 from I-80 to Dodge. Also on eastbound Dodge from I-680 to 90th. And on westbound Dodge from 72nd to 90th. Be sure to buckle up and drive safe out there. I'm Joey Colbert.
This time-saving traffic is brought to you by Saul's Jewelry and Loan.
I have never seen this before. Hi, John with Saul's Jewelry and Loan. The price of gold is the highest it's ever been. Now is the time to get the best price on your broken jewelry, chains, and diamond jewelry. Saul's has been around a while, and trust us, now's the time. Saul's Jewelry and Loan.
My taco pie is really something special, and it can't be imitated. It starts with my zesty taco sauce, seasoned beef, onions, lettuce, tomatoes, mounds of cheddar, and mozzarella cheese. This pie is the real deal. For a limited time, build your own feast with the specialty pizza, like my taco pie, a one-topping pizza, and cinnamon monkey bread. Do yourself a favor and order. Today, Godfather's Pizza. Do it.
News Talk 1290 Coil is your radio home for Omaha Storm Chasers baseball, proud AAA affiliate of the Kansas City Royals. Tune in to hear every pitch, every hit, and every out as the Chasers play at Warner Park and across the International League in 2024. With the voice of the Omaha Storm Chasers, Nick Batters, on News Talk 1290 Coil.
The Storm Chasers are on the road and take on Indianapolis tonight. First pitch is scheduled for 5:35. You can hear all the action on your home for the Storm Chasers 1290 Coil.
Success in today's electrical market requires your company to be able to adjust to an ever-changing field. A partnership with IBEW Local 22 gives you that flexibility with access to journeymen, apprentices, proven training programs, marketing assistance, entry into markets not available before, ability to expand and contract with changing market conditions, and a benefits package for you and your employees. Contact Bob at IBEW Local 22 for additional details at 402-980-7596.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds, which could be life-changing. I mean, you could put that money towards that zero-turn lawnmower you've always wanted. And after using its edge-shaping technology to meticulously sculpt the face of the Mona Lisa into your grass, you'll become the undisputed king of Saturday morning lawn care, leaving your neighbor and sworn enemy Gary to question his place in the delicate neighborhood ecosystem. And it's all because you could save money switching at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go. Shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Tickets for less. Best seats, best prices, no service fees. Shop ticketsforless.com. KOZN Bellevue, Omaha, Council Bluffs. This is 1620 The Zone.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that we can give our daughters everything they need to grow and learn. But not every child can focus on classes and play dates.
Nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. face hunger. That's 1 in 6. School lunch might be their only meal each day, and it's heartbreaking to imagine any child going to bed hungry. We're dreaming of a perfect day when kids can smile, play, and just be kids without worrying about where their next meal will come from. Feeding America is working to make that perfect day a reality.
Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste. That food is given to families and children in need. Being a kid should be about doing things that make an ordinary day extraordinary. Learning to play an instrument, building a sandcastle, hosting tea parties. Hunger should never be an obstacle to growing up.
You can help end childhood hunger in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
And we're back. Mornings with Sharp and Handley. Here's Gary, Nick, and Jimmy on 1620 The Zone.
It's that exciting time of the college baseball season as regional play gets underway. The road to Omaha begins this weekend, and excited to not only talk about that, but talk about Nebraska being back in that mix of teams trying to get their way to Omaha. As we welcome in the very best when it comes to talking college baseball, and you're going to hear him on ESPN broadcasts and also on all of the College World Series broadcasts as well. That is Kyle Peterson joining us here on the 42-degree hotline. Good morning, Kyle. How are you, my man?
Good morning. I'm well. How are we doing?
Doing great. So this year, if we're to have any major takeaways out of the unveiling, whether it was anybody that was a surprise, anybody that is playing hot as of late, I know I'm kind of looking at LSU and getting themselves in the tournament. What were maybe some of the big national takeaways when it came to just this overall field of 64?
Oh, I think it's always, there's a few things. Who are the top 8, which I think I probably would have flip-flopped Georgia and Oklahoma. And then who are the last few teams to host? I think East Carolina surprised some people. Duke, Mississippi State probably fit a little bit better on that line for me. And then the back end, like who gets in that you're not sure if they're going to and vice versa. Nebraska saw College of Charleston this year. I know they handled them. But I was surprised they didn't get in. Kind of wanted to see a team like Lamar get in. It was second or third in the country in wins and swept Oklahoma. And aside from winning the conference tournament, you look at it and say, hey, man, we kind of did about everything we can.
Mm-hmm.
And then Coastal getting in.
Yeah.
I think at the end, there's a lot that didn't think Coastal would get in. Like for sentimental purposes, I'm glad they are because, you want Gary Gilmore to have one more ride. But there's always those arguments at the back end. I think that the other thing is just the number of guys that are playing in the tournament, thankfully, that are going to hear their names called really early in the draft in a few weeks. And we pretty much have all of them.
Well, it was interesting. You mentioned some of those teams that got in. I was reading something on Indiana. Well, first of all, going to a lot of the morning of final projections and predictions that a lot of them did not have Indiana mentioned. And knowing that their staff was already setting up exit interviews with the players for this week, and then all of a sudden realizing, hey, they knew they were in the bubble. They knew that it was going to be worth watching, but it almost sounded like Indiana, even their staff wasn't fully confident that they were going to be in the mix as well.
Which is understandable. I mean, I think, there's two ways to do that, right? I mean, you can really outwardly politic for it, and here's all the reasons that I think we should be in, and history kind of tells you, I don't know that really has an effect one way or another. Or be prepared that if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. If you're Indiana, listen, if you're going to get in off the bubble, it's nice when your name is literally called third in the show. Like, you don't have to wait very long.
Right.
It's okay, good. Now we can go get lunch. Like this changes the entire day. Boys go eat. We're going to practice in an hour and a half.
Right.
As opposed to those that have to wait until the very end to figure out if we're in and if you are where you're in. So I thought it was good to see. I mean, again, you could probably take, I don't know, 12 to 15 teams and throw them all in a bucket, and everybody can make their argument for, and everybody can make their argument against. But at the end of the day, you put yourself in that position to where, there's a decision to be made about it. And that's the reality of it. I don't think there's anything egregious going on. I think that the way the process is right now, that's the reality of the process.
Looking at the overall number one seed and just kind of taking a look at what Tony V and that Tennessee team, we had a chance to see them last year. And it seemed kind of like a little bit more of a humbled team compared to what happened to them the previous year, where they're, just hitting bombs. You got guys that are hitting triple digits on the mound, and it was a cocky bunch, but they get denied a trip to Omaha last year. They're there. I liked being able to talk to Tony Vitello. I thought for a team that is, we'll call it what they are. I mean, it's a team that has a lot of fun, has a lot of swag to them. When you look at this 2024 version of Tennessee and what has made them so successful, what jumps off the page about this group?
Well, they're complete. And I think in order to go through a run like that, you really have to be. The offense comes up first because they lead the country in home runs. But, the team ERA, I think, is top 5 or 6 in the country. And they play in a ballpark that's pretty offensive. So that's, to me, the thing that sticks out the most is everybody's going to go to offense first, and I get it. And Christian Moore's got a chance to hit 30 home runs this year. He's already broke the single season and all-time home run record. There was some guy named Helton that played there that he just blew past. So If you do that there, you're probably pretty good at baseball. But the completeness of Tennessee sticks out. They do it a little bit different. It's not a rotation like they had 3 years ago, to where it was ultimately, 3 guys that you think are going to be in the first round. This one, Drew Beam's been there the whole time. But they've used openers a lot in the SEC season and then backed it up with some different guys. So it doesn't look maybe the way that you think a starting staff would look like for a team that's number one in the country. But when you look at the staff as a whole, you understand that that's why it works pretty well.
The Corvallis region's interesting from the standpoint of, we know, seeing Oregon State back there as a number one seed, but also seeing Irvine back in. Nichols, I know, has put together a really good baseball program. Tulane historically has been a solid baseball program as well. It just seems like that one is sporting 3 out of the 4 pretty damn good baseball brands there, Kyle, but also Nichols, who maybe not a lot of people have had a chance to see or know of. I know they've played in Lincoln a few times over the past few years too. That's an interesting, and I don't know, maybe one of the more competitive. We're not sure what comes out of this one.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon State's really good. But obviously in that situation, anything can happen. Nichols has got a kid that's got real stuff. The mayor's kid can run it up there. And I think he struck out almost 100 this year. Nebraska handled them when they came, and they swept Nichols when Nichols came to town this year. But it's still a team that can be dangerous. Irvine, Ben Orloff is their head coach. He actually played in Omaha with Irvine and has kept that program going. They were in the discussion to host, and then they got to go to Oregon State. That's a spot, too, to where Oregon State's got a middle infielder, Travis Pisana, that he could be the first pick. He's definitely going to go in the top 10, but depending on economics, he could be the first pick. And those are the ones that you hope the country gets to see, whether they make it or not, but that everybody gets a chance to see a kid like that who, again, broke the single season home run record.
Yeah.
At Oregon State. There's a lot of places that's happened this year. I'd still be surprised if Oregon State doesn't get out of that one. Their ballpark is a real home field advantage. And I think, when you talk to teams that have played them, they went down to Globe Life for essentially 2 weeks. Everybody came out of there saying, man, like Arkansas, Hagen Smith struck out 17. You talk to Arkansas afterwards and they're like, I don't care what the numbers are. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
That's a top 8 type team. So I'd be surprised if they don't get out, but it's definitely not a layup. That's for sure.
We're talking to Kyle Peterson, ESPN. College baseball gets underway. The regionals get underway this weekend. We'll get to Nebraska, Florida here in a moment in that region. But another one, and you brought up Duke, maybe be on the outside of possibly hosting as a number 2 seed right now in that Norman regional. That's another one that's interesting from the standpoint. No, Oklahoma's good. Oral Roberts, this is a team that was in Omaha in the College World Series, had a horrendous start to the season, but they're able to take advantage of what was a Summit League where it's essentially no one seemed to want to take a hold of that other than St. Thomas, who is ineligible for postseason play. And then you've got UConn out of the Big East that, have for a conference that maybe is just a little bit stronger than it's been the past couple of years. That one to me, especially with the 2-seed Duke in there, maybe something to prove. That one seems to be another intriguing regional.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's crazy. So I'll be in Stillwater. I've got that one. But between Stillwater and Norman, you've got two teams that were in the College World Series last year. One's a 3-seed, one's a 4-seed.
Yeah.
And regardless of what you think they are this year, the reality is last year matters when you get to this time of year, because a lot of those kids, and obviously there's a ton of turnover, but a lot of them been in that situation. And Oral Roberts went through Stillwater last year in a super offensive regional. So sometimes when you look at these, it's like, okay, who are the dangerous fours? Who are the ones that can actually maybe not win it, but can change the way that everybody, A, has to pitch day one, and then B, has to go after the balance of it. And regardless of record, I still think you got to look at Oral Roberts as one of those. I think Duke's super dangerous. They're really deep. They're really deep on the mound. They're older. I mean, they were 20-14 in the ACC, if you include the ACC tournament, and blew through that tournament to win the thing. So history doesn't say, hey, if you win the conference tournament, then you're going to stay hot. It really doesn't align that way.
Yeah.
But I think they were pretty consistent all year. And one of these years, Duke's going to get there. I don't know when, but it's not going to be long. If they're going to get there this year, they got to go through an OU team that was definitely the best in the regular season in the Big 12. And they haven't played at home in a while. I think it's been since 16. They've hosted a regional, so they should show up.
You mentioned Oral Roberts from a year ago. We saw at 08 Fresno State ride that all the way to a national championship as well. I know those teams, when you look at the 64 and you look at all four seeds, there's never one that you say, oh, yeah, there's your guy that's not only going to make it to the College World Series, but have a chance at the national championship, given how rare that is. But do you feel like there are some 4 seeds that, like you just described there, that force how a 1 seed is going to go about pitching to them, how a 1 seed is going to go about handling them? Do you feel like there's a couple of 4 seeds in this tournament that can dictate that?
I think Oral Roberts is one. Grand Canyon gets interesting in Tucson. They play every year. I'm almost sure that I saw this right, but I think Grand Canyon won the series this year. So you're getting the 4 seed that already beat you 2 out of 3 this year.
Yeah.
And I would assume that affects at least the way that you look at how you're going to pitch right away. But those would be, I would say, the 2 that jump out. But again, everything's going to align so right, because so often, for me, the most dangerous 4 seeds are the one that you look at and they go, hey, they've got a real arm.
Yep.
Because then it forces the one to look at it differently and not necessarily throw off. Everybody looks at it totally differently. Like last year, LSU had Tulane was the 4. Tulane had a losing record. And Skeens pitched, they won. And it worked and they ran through, but that doesn't always follow suit all over the place. You know, for Oklahoma State, for instance, what are they going to do day one? You get Niagara, a team that's never even been in the tournament. And I think you really have to have the discussion as to whether or not you hold an ace and try to get through day one, and then it sets you up better than everybody else. So I don't really look at many 4 seeds and go, hey, they got a chance to get through.
Yeah.
I know what happens every once in a while. It's more who can cause some havoc and change the way that people have to pitch.
Before we get into the Stillwater Regional, and awesome to know that's where you will be for this week as well. The Chapel Hill one, and I bring up, you mentioned Paul Skeens, you mentioned LSU, defending national champs. It was at one point really looking like they might not even make the NCAA tournament. They played solid in the SEC tournament. You saw them come on as of late. They're a 2 seed in that Chapel Hill Regional. When you look at LSU, is there more to come with this Tiger team, just by your estimate, or are they maybe close to being maxed out of what we saw there in the SEC tournament?
No, I don't think they're maxed out. I think what LSU found is they've got 2 real weekend starters. Gage Jump and Luke Holman have been outstanding. And when you have 2 guys that are somewhat interchangeable the way that they've been at the end of the year, you don't necessarily need as much bullpen depth as some other places. And they've got plenty. I mean, they've got 4, 5, 6 guys in the bullpen they're comfortable going to. Offensively, it started to click more as the year went on. I mean, they started 3-12 in the league. They had to sweep Ole Miss at the end of the year to get to 13 league wins. And then I think you probably go to Hoover saying, okay, with 13, we should be in. And then they played as well as they played the whole year. I mean, they went 4-1 at the SEC tournament. So the overall SEC record, when you look at it for LSU, it doesn't look bad. They're one game under 500.
Yeah.
But going into the last game or the last series of SEC, they were 10-17. So peaking at the right time, yes, absolutely peaking at the right time. But I don't think it's flash. I think LSU's a team that can end up in Omaha. North Carolina's really good.
Yeah.
It's super consistent. They're young on the mound at the beginning, but they've been great. But if you look at North Carolina, LSU, like, does anybody have a distinct advantage? I don't think so. I don't. I think LSU didn't just get hot for 2 weeks. They're a better team, significantly better team than they were 6 weeks ago.
Stillwater, where a lot of people in this state are going to have their eyes on. You've got Oklahoma State as the 1 seed. Nebraska comes as the 2. They take on Florida, the defending national runner-up, and then you've got Niagara in there. I know everybody wants to know that matchup, especially with the way Brett Sears has thrown this year for Nebraska, the Big Ten Pitcher of the Year, what they're going to be facing against Florida. Everybody knows Jack Caglione and what he's all about, both as a two-way player. But when it comes to Florida's depth compared to what we've seen in previous years, especially last year, this matchup on its face, Kyle, how do you look at it?
Well, first of all, we know who Nebraska's going to throw, or at least I think we assume we know who Nebraska's going to throw. I don't know who Florida's going to throw yet. They could throw Caglione. Florida hasn't played since, it'll be 11 days since they played their last game when they go in, because they got beat the Tuesday of the SEC tournament. They didn't play another game. That was it. So they can start anybody. I have a hunch they'll start Liam Peterson, the freshman, who they were really high on at the beginning of the year. He had some growing pains. Back half of the year has been really good. It's mid-90s real stuff. Probably going to be one of the next guys at Florida by the time it's done. And the back half of the year, it's looked like it. They're very young in the bullpen. And that's really what got them in midweek games is I think they've thrown 9 freshmen over the course of the year. And that usually doesn't happen there. And then Caglione really has been their main guy on the weekend. When they needed a win, for the most part, he at least gave them a chance to win. Where he pitches, how they use him, I'm not really sure. But if I were, my hunch would say they use Peterson game 1. And then you got Caglione game 2, or maybe you can mix and match from there. But I would bet it goes Peterson, Caglione, and then Neely, or they figure it out from there. They're good. They're definitely not as balanced as they were last year. They'll defend quite the way they did last year. Caglione is as good a hitter as there is in the country. It's a freak. And that's why he's going to go top 5 as a hitter too. They may give him a chance to pitch when he gets into pro ball, but he's going to get drafted as a hitter. And there's plenty of other offensive pieces to Florida, but I would throw the record out. I would tell you that. Are they as complete as they were last year? No. Do they have, 5, 6, 7 guys that are going to play in the big leagues? Yes, they do. They just were really young, and it clipped them for a while this year.
Is assessing Nebraska more challenging than what this last week would indicate, what their record would indicate? We've talked about it on a weekly basis about the midweek challenges they have, and it's interesting when you talk about Florida, who's also experienced those as well.
Right.
It just feels like for a team that maybe you don't overly complicate it, it's a team that got on a run. They got humiliated by Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament, then they go on a run that you can carry that into the postseason. But how do you assess this Nebraska team in looking at their postseason prospects?
You got to be able to pitch it enough, and they do more than pitch it enough. I think what Rob has done there, I think you got to have an ace. Clearly, they have an ace. I think you've got to have enough behind it to where if you get beat, you got a puncher's chance to come back through. Well, they just showed they can do that because they did it in the Big Ten tournament. Offensively, I think there's plenty of punch. Are they going to match up with the top power teams in the country? No, but is there plenty, especially in that ballpark? Yeah, there's definitely plenty there. And they throw a ton of strikes. And I think it's one of the biggest things when you get to the postseason is you're going to give up a few home runs in that ballpark. I don't think there's any way around it. But man, if you throw strikes, it gives you a much better chance.
Yeah.
Because the minute you start compounding errors, then ultimately, it's the 2-run or the 3-run home run that gets you. So yeah, I think there's plenty. I would also say this, and it's not to denigrate Tuesday and Wednesday games, but I don't think they're as important as far as telling me who's good than the weekend. because a lot of times you're trying to get guys work in the midweek. It's, figuring out who your ideal guys are on the weekend. I mean, I was just looking the other day. I think Nebraska's got 16 guys that have double-digit appearances.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else in the country can say that. And so if you've got that many guys that have that many appearances, you would expect to struggle sometime on Tuesdays.
Right.
Because you're trying to figure out who you really want to go on the weekend consistently. So I don't put a lot of stock in what happens Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And again, if you did, Florida wouldn't be in the tournament. But yet, if you watch them on the weekend at the back end, I think they look a little bit different.
I do want to ask you about this, and you brought up, this is a conversation I've had with Ed Service before as well, just as recent as this year. And you see these games week in and week out. You pitched at a high level at Stanford. You're a big league pitcher as well. The inability to attack the strike zone, we saw even in last year's College World Series, mentioning teams that get in trouble, guys that have electric arms, power stuff, but it seems that we've seen walks more. We've seen counts drag on a little bit more where guys aren't getting ahead, emphasizing first pitch strike, all of those things. I don't know how much you've seen it or noticed it compared to maybe previous years, but if there is a cause for why that might be the case, have you been able to kind of put your thumb on what the cause could be for that?
Yeah, I think one is, in many cases, umpires are evaluated based on the TrackMan zone. And the zone is more similar to a major league strike zone now than it's ever been. So, listen, this is a long time ago, but when I was playing, our zone was big.
Yeah.
And it's not anymore. So it's just simply like your area that you can get a called strike is not what it used to be. And I think the zones are right. So I don't have anything against what the strike zones are right now. I think they're accurate, but it's harder to throw strikes than it used to be. And guys hit more home runs. And so there's a natural tendency, I think, mentally for people to try to miss bats early instead of trying to get ahead and flip a count. Again, that's one of the things that really impresses me about Nebraska. They don't walk too many guys. And as soon as you can get your guys to understand the value of throwing strike one, because if you really go look at it, there aren't that many teams that really hunt strike one or first pitch. Take strike one out of the equation, but first pitch. And the minute you get ahead, I think from a pitch calling standpoint, from a mental standpoint, it allows you to do different things the rest of the at bat. With most guys, some guys throw three whenever they want to, and count is almost irrelevant. For most, that's not really the case. But long answer to your question, I think one of the biggest reasons that you're seeing is the zone smaller, and I think it's just tougher to throw strikes now than it used to be.
Real quickly before I let you go, speaking of Ed Service, that's obviously a big development in college baseball. 21 years of the helm at Creighton. He will get one more year before he steps aside. They'll have a coach in waiting. I know you've had many conversations with Ed. You know Ed. You know him as one of the great baseball guys in this area. What were your thoughts when you knew that era is coming to an end after next season?
Well, my thoughts were he's done a ton for Creighton and a ton for baseball in Omaha in general, and the consistency at which he runs his program. I think not just from a wins-loss standpoint, but just from a human consistency has always been really, I think essential to the way that program has gone. I went through this not as a player at the back end, but when I was covering the game with Coach Marcus at Stanford to win. It was just time for him to move on and either do something else or get a chance to do whatever the hell he wants to do in life.
Yeah.
It feels like that's probably the situation for Ed too. I think it's a pretty attractive job. I think it's a hard job, but I think it's a pretty attractive job. And given just the university itself, the Big East is definitely not a bad baseball league. It's a league that you can do some things in. Historically, we've seen that. UConn's probably been the most consistent since they've come back in, but still, it's one that you can look at and say, hey, the league's got a chance to get multiple bids in, not just every once in a while, but on a fairly regular basis. So, yeah, man, I've always enjoyed my time with Ed, and I'm glad that he gets one more to kind of go out the way that he wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, appreciate you spending time with us. I know it kept you a little bit longer, but always enjoy these conversations, my man, and we'll look forward to talking to you throughout the postseason. Have a great call in Stillwater.
Okay. Amen. Thanks.
It's Kyle Peterson, the best right there, and that's awesome. No, he's going to be in the Stillwater Regional covering that. ESPN Plus is where you can get those games. Nebraska, Florida, that'll be the 2 o'clock game, and then the nightcap on Friday will be Oklahoma State and Niagara. Going to take a quick break. We're back with more right here on 1620 The Zone.
Gary Sharp, Nick Handley, and Jimmy Chavez. Mornings with Sharp and Handley. Weekdays 6 to 10. On 1620 The Zone. 1620thezone.com. Previously on The Crossover.
I opened up my fortune cookie last night, and on the front it says, here you can download a bunch of music. And then on the back, there's a QR code for Napster.
Yeah, fortune cookies used to be fun, whimsical. At the end of your chicken fried rice, you're like, boop, boop, boop.
Boop, boop, boop. That's exactly what I did
we had
last
Chinese
night.
the other night. I don't think we ever got fortune cookies.
Even worse.
Mornings with Sharp and Handley. The Connor Happer Show. Unsportsmanlike conduct. 6A to 6P. 1620. The Zone. Your Omaha area forecast from the Godfather's Pizza Weather Center and KETV Newswatch 7 on 1620 The Zone.
A fantastic day ahead for Wednesday. Expect mostly sunny skies throughout the day with a southeast breeze, 5 to 15 miles per hour. Borderline top 10 day with highs near 80. I'm meteorologist Sean Everson from KETV Newswatch 7.
1620 The Zone. Traffic.
From the Pyramid Roofing Time Saving Traffic Center. Heads up, we get a crash on westbound 96 in Harrison. Also, there's reports of an accident on westbound I-80 at 60th. There's slow goings on eastbound I-80 from I-680 to 84th and on northbound I-680 from Pacific to the westbound Dodge Expressway. Be sure to buckle up and drive safe out there. I'm Joey Colbert.
Time-saving traffic is brought to you by Pyramid Roofing.
If you've seen the white trucks with Rufus, the spotted dog, then you know about Pyramid Roofing. Replace your siding, windows, roof, or gutters. Call Pyramid Roofing at 402-502-9300 or visit
PyramidRoof.com. Never settle for less.
Hey, it's John and Josh here for the FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs have tipped off, but there's still lots of time to get in on the action with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just place one winning $5 bet. You get $150 in bonus bucks to use on same-game parlays, live bets, even championship futures, and a whole lot more. Because there is no better place to bet all NBA playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. So go to FanDuel.com/1620 and get started.
So like John said, just go to FanDuel.com/1620 and new customers, again, you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 that you can use on a variety of props. It's FanDuel.com/1620. 21 plus and present in Iowa. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit is required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-BETS-OFF.
Forget the drive to Colorado or Missouri. Stop into any Omaha 42 Degrees and indulge in a curated cannabis experience. Premium flower, cannabis, pre-rolls, and cannabis accessories paired with an elevated customer service experience. All are waiting for you at 42 Degrees. From novices to connoisseurs, we're here to elevate your cannabis journey. 42 Degrees, your destination for top-tier cannabis, second to none product selection, and exceptional service. By your mom's house.
Sorry, but we actually have a wait list for our Monstera.
Shaw's greenhouse is really bringing in the green.
We can't keep snake plants in stock.
She needs a construction manager to build on her roots and grow.
We could add a whole section for ferns. Here we'd have dahlias, dahlias, and more dahlias.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
News Talk 1290 Coil is your radio home for Omaha Storm Chasers baseball, proud AAA affiliate of the Kansas City Royals. Tune in to hear every pitch, every hit, and every out as the Chasers play at Warner Park and across the International League in 2024. With the voice of the Omaha Storm Chasers, Nick Batters, on News Talk 1290 Coil.
The Storm Chasers are on the road and take on Indianapolis tonight. First pitch is scheduled for 5:35. You can hear all the action on your home for the Storm Chasers 1290 Coil.
Host is roasting every morning.
Host Coffee Services is on a mission to invigorate every workplace with a blend of bold flavors and unforgettable service, creating moments with our coffee, water, and food services that spark joy, productivity, and connection. Call us today.
Proudly serving Nebraska since 1972. Host Coffee Services is always roasting something good for you.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online at hims.com/radio. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation to determine the ED medication that's best for you, discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and a range of treatment options, including trusted generic alternatives to the name brands, at up to 95% off. ED is personal, and at Hims, so is treating it. Just go to hims.com/radio and get connected to a licensed medical provider online for free, with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, hims.com/radio. That's hims.com/radio for your free online visit. HIMS.com/RADIO.
Roofing, siding, and gutters. Make the right call with the rooferees at John Higgins Weather Guard.
Now back to mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone.
You know, a lot of the questions for Nebraska's opening round matchup against Florida is would they see Jack Caglione on the mound? And as you heard from Kyle Peterson, if he were to take a guess, maybe I'll take a guess with him, take a guess at it, that they would not maybe throw Caglione until what they might think would be a winner's bracket game. But the Florida baseball season, it's interesting. There's some parallels there with Nebraska and those midweek struggles that they've had. A lot of my ESPN push notifications on the midweek was usually a midweek highlight of a Jack Caglione 500-foot bomb. And then you would find out later that, oh, they lost. And you're like, oh, okay, well, they still got Jack Caglione. And that dude is a monster. It's the way that you pitch to him, the way that that Brett Sears is going to attack that lineup is going to be extremely interesting. I mentioned this yesterday. This is not a Florida team that the numbers are just eye-popping offensively. Now, you also have to consider the competition. 272 in the SEC as a team is probably a lot more competitive than 272 as a team in the Big Ten, in the Big East. But, yeah, Caglione hitting .415 on the year. 29 home runs, 58 runs driven in. He's got a very modest on-base percentage of .525. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. But, yeah, when it comes to who Nebraska might see, if it is Liam Peterson, the freshman that Kyle was alluding to, Peterson does have 12 starts on the season. He's officially 2-4, 5.83 earned run average. I always like to look at the strikeout to walk ratio, which is 63-29 with Liam Peterson, if that is who Nebraska does see on Friday, which, again, very good to hear that Kyle Peterson, a very familiar voice that'll be on the ESPN Plus coverage for the Stillwater Regional.
Yeah, that was nice to hear.
Yeah. Big time right there. That's going to be an interesting regional. Oklahoma State's a good team. I can't pretend that I know much about Niagara, but the Florida side of this matchup is one that I think a lot of people like myself, when you first saw that pop up, that Nebraska will be playing Florida, and I know they had some fun with the old 95 Fiesta Bowl between Nebraska and Florida. People forget in that great 2005 season that Nebraska got their first College World Series victory when they beat Arizona State that night, where Jabba Chamberlain was just dominant against the Sun Devils. It was the following game, in the winner's bracket game, that Florida bested Nebraska, that 2005 College World Series. And then Nebraska turned around and ended up losing to, I think it was Arizona. Yeah, it was Arizona State. And it was just a wild game. But there is some baseball history in the postseason with these two schools, not just football as well. As we go to the 42-degree hotline, my goodness, I'm glad to see this name pop up on the caller screen. It is Random Mike, who I was worried we hadn't heard from in a while. How are you, Mike?
Hey, appreciate it, Nick. Hey, that interview with Josh Caron yesterday was really good.
Yeah, that was all him. That wasn't me.
No, that was you too.
He's one of those guys that I'd mentioned to their SID after talking to him. I said, thanks for setting that up. He was fantastic. And the sports information director had said, yeah, he's been really good over the last month and has been very natural talking to the media. I thought he gave some really good perspective of just that entire run. That was a lot of fun.
Are you hearing anything about where he might be drafted?
Not as far as what round he could go into, but the fact that he is now being talked about as someone who will probably hear his name, I think speaks volumes of the kind of season he's had. Because as you know, Mike, if you're a catcher, it's one thing what you're considered to be as someone that's going to be a backstop and a reliable defensive guy. When you can start putting some pop with the bat that he's shown, even a little bit last year, but showed this year more consistently, and then especially what he did in the postseason with 6 home runs in the Big Ten tournament alone, I think that turns some heads. So when they have some of the next reports come out, because I was getting the same question about Brett Sears yesterday too, where I had seen, and this was an earlier mock in April, that Brett Sears was, I saw his name as high as maybe a early 4th rounder. I'll be interested to see where Caron is. I haven't heard anything yet, but I think this next go round with some of the draft sheets, it'll be interesting to see where Caron is.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, one of my heroes is Swanson. That one at that.
Mm-hmm.
And you hope this is kind of contagious, because I don't know about you. My pet peeve, and I've heard this from a lot of Husker fans that are pretty knowledgeable, is big swings with 2 strikes, and short at bats.
Yeah.
And that long at bat and foul stuff off. And I think in the tournament, we got a little better at that, except for that first game, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. And, Mike, it's a good observation on your part, because when you think of, even if from the individual standpoint, if you're struggling, and maybe it's not even necessarily weak contact, but you're just not getting the result with every at bat, you get into one of those counts and you're fouling pitches off, and you're putting the stress on the pitcher that he's going to have to continue to challenge you. And yet everything you're seeing, you're getting contact in, and then you finally have that result, even if it's something that results into just a walk, what that can do from your mental psyche. I've always looked at guys that are struggling or guys that are in any type of a slump, and I've seen this even at the high school level. You get into those prolonged at-bats where you actually win the at-bat. It's amazing what that can do for your confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And a guy that was huge for our team for much of the year and has been kind of in a slump and striking out a lot, Stone. How do we get him out of that?
In a similar way, it's almost if you would just prefer him, even if it's a line out, just you start seeing more solid contact, because as you know, Mike, it's so cyclical for guys that get off to hot starts. And I was watching that with Creighton this year with Ben North, who it didn't matter. Anytime he came up to the plate, if there were bases loaded, he was probably going to hit a grand slam. I mean, he was on this ridiculous tear, and then he cooled off a little bit. You know that those things aren't sustained. And even in a slump, it's not something that, as long as you have the right mental approach, it's not going to be sustained. And this is the other thing that I look at between Lance Arvell and Mike Sirianni, the new addition to the coaching staff, that they work with these guys. I don't think they've lost any confidence with Stone. I think it's just getting him in a position in an at-bat, whether he's starting or he's coming off the bench, in a position that they feel like if you got a guy that you're able to attack early in the zone, that's where I look at guys that are in a slump. When you're not seeing pitches early in the count, especially if a guy is prone to more fastballs in the zone early in the count in the first or second pitch, if you get that type of scouting report on someone, for a guy like Ethan Stone that has the ability to go both ways with it too. I mean, he can pull the ball, but man, he can spray it the other way with a lot of force. He
was doing that early.
Yes, he was. And that's a situation I look for. Pitchers that are more prone to giving you early fastballs is something that Stone, even if he's lining out, he's starting to feel just that overall just that good feeling of barreling up something and being able to get good contact on it. That's what I'd be watching for. So even if you see an at-bat or two this weekend, it doesn't result into a hit, but you see solid contact, you're hoping that that's something that will progress into finally seeing the ball drop in there in the outfield.
One thing I really like about this team, I don't think it's been talked about much, we got a center fielder. You could basically have him out there by himself,
Yeah.
And then we got a great catcher. And I think one thing that was really good was our infield defense for most of that tournament. And these guys, and I'm a big guy on the footwork, as a lot of people know, I'm a fanatic about using the tennis footwork. And Will Bolt is having all those guys do it now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting a great jump. And there were a lot of good plays made by our second baseman, our shortstop. I mean, pretty much across the board. I'm really impressed with it.
It's an athletic group. I'm with you on that one, Mike. I've been making a lot of comparisons to that 21 team that we saw go to Fayetteville, almost pull that one off. And as much as maybe they lack a little bit more of the consistent pop that team had in the lineup, and a lot of those super seniors like the Roskams, the Ackers. I mean, even though Schwellenbach wasn't a super senior, you had a lot of those dudes. That was an athletic group too. Jackson Hallmark, very athletic on the base path. I think Silva's the best we've seen from just a pure speed, but also just solid base running instinct standpoint too. So you've got a situation where if you're able to get those guys on base and what you can do, and we've seen this with Will. Maybe his first couple of years, he was a little bit more, hey, 3-hole, 4-hole hitter guy up. We're going to go ahead and drive those runs in. Now there's a lot more consideration of putting the ball down, getting in play, and trying to get the running game going. So he understands he's got an athletic team, and I think that you're seeing a lot of those decisions with what they want to do on the base path accordingly.
Hey, one more thing. Well, I don't know if you've been following Waldron. He is fun to watch.
Yeah,
and now with Schwellenbach, we're going to have 2 starters in the major leagues, and it could be a lot of fun.
No, I'm with you. That's awesome with Spencer getting the call up. He's going to be starting today and what Waldron and going to a pitch that he didn't really even possess in the college game. I know we've talked about that before with the knuckle. And for a guy and you remember, Mike, his freshman year, he was outstanding, but then he really struggled those next couple of years, but then finished his career at Nebraska in a position where he was able to get drafted and he was so lights out. So really bookend his career at Nebraska with a lot of success, but never once did you ever see him use that knuckleball. So it is it's very Waldron-esque that he is succeeding with a pitch that we never even saw in college.
Yeah, and let me tell you, the announcers love him, and he's just fun to watch.
Yeah. Always appreciate it, Mike. Be well, man.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yeah, the Waldron, there's just the Mike and Matt Waldron stories when we'd go on the road. The Twins are always just very interesting. And when you have 2 guys that are very good baseball players, been around each other in some of the more successful moments of their life competitively with what they're able to do at Westside, and then the success that they got to experience with one another in Nebraska. I just laugh when I think of both Matt and Mike, because there was always that a little bit of that separation. I don't want to even call it anxiety, but there was one time we were at the airport getting ready to hit a plane, and not actually hit a plane. That'd be really bad, but we were getting ready to board the plane. And I think it was Mike. God knows where Matt was. Matt had some really interesting airport stories. There was one time we actually the SID had to pull out a media guide because Matt had forgotten his driver's license during TSA.
Here, this is him.
And the fact that they actually said, "Okay, we'll let this suffice." Like it was total Matt Waldron. But I remember, I don't know if Matt might have been in the bathroom or something, and Mike had this concerned look on his face, like, "Have you seen Matt?" "Oh, I'm sure he's around, right?" "Okay, I didn't know if you saw him or not." "Okay, just making sure." Like, "I'm sure he's here." Like, what, did Matt wander off into another plane or something? It was almost like he pulled like a Kevin McAllister, and as the team was they're trying to go to Florida, he was heading to New York. I don't know. It was, but yeah, Matt. I know he was really
He's on the tarmac.
He was really concerned. It was great. Yeah, those 2 are so much fun to be around. But yeah, Matt Waldron, to Mike's point, when you sit down and just have a conversation with him, he's so into what you have going on in the moment. You're trying to find out more about him, but he wants to know more about you. He's just a very inquisitive person. But he's doing fantastic. And then, as we mentioned, if you missed the first hour of the show, we ended that hour talking about Spencer Schwellenbach, who will be pitching today as the starting pitcher for the Atlanta Braves in their matchup later on today, which just very cool to see that climb for him. He was started out the season in high A, was promoted to double A's, just had great numbers, and will skip the step at triple A, be going to the big leagues as Atlanta's trying to get a little help. But yeah, he will get his debut against the Nats tonight at home in Atlanta. That's a game that actually will be on ESPN Plus too. So you can watch that. You can watch ESPN Plus to see Spencer Schwellenbach's debut. Then you can keep that subscription for this weekend if you don't already for the regional. All right, going to take a quick break. We're coming back. 9 o'clock, we'll be talking some college football with Bill Bender. He is the national college football writer for the Sporting News. And also Brandon Vogel of Counter Read. We'll get back to some Nebraska football conversation as well before we get out of here on 1620 The Zone.
Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone and 1620thezone.com with Gary Sharp and Nick Handley. Now live on Twitch, YouTube, and 1620thezone.com.
It's Champions replacement window season, and we're celebrating with buy 2 windows, get 2 free. If your windows are drafty, difficult to operate, or costing you money on your energy bill, it's time to replace them. Champion Windows is here to help. Champion builds our own windows right here in the USA. We make the process easy. We help you choose the best design options for your home. We then build your project in our very own factory. Our install team manages your project every step of the way, and it's all backed by our lifetime guarantee. Turn your house into your dream home with more livable space in a new Champion sunroom, or enhance your curb appeal with new siding, now 30% off. Don't wait, this sale won't last long. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and 30% off sunrooms and siding. Call 877-GO-CHAMPION or visit championsavenow.com to schedule a free in-home estimate today. All discounts apply to our regular prices. Select styles apply. Minimum purchase required. Cannot be combined with other advertised offers. See store or website for details.
When it comes to protecting your home, J. Stennett Contracting takes pride in ensuring every detail is handled. Roofing, siding, gutters. When it comes to the exterior of your home, J. Stennett Contracting has you covered. Water, wind, and hail can wreak havoc on the exterior of your home. If your home is damaged, let J. Stennett Contracting come out for a no-obligation inspection. If repairs are needed, they will help you through every step of the process. When you need an honest assessment, J. Stennett Contracting has you covered. JSCRestoration.com.
Email us on the Equitable inbox with whatever is on your mind. The Zone inbox is brought to you by Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. You can hit me up, agree, disagree, tell me your thoughts on life at Handley at 1620thezone.com. We want to hear from you on the Equitable Bank Zone inbox.
I love playing sports, especially for my school. And that's because school sports are special. It's where it's safe to fail. It's where we're taught resilience, where our fear becomes confidence. It's where we learn to get back up after every fall. School sports are where 7.8 million students go from I can't to I can.
This message presented by the NSAA and the Nebraska Administrators Association.
At Cox Mobile, we know you're smart. You brush your teeth in the shower to save time, make coffee ice cubes for your cold brew, and wear goggles to cut onions. You also added Cox Mobile. So smart. Now you're running on the network with unbeatable 5G reliability and saving on your Cox internet. It's ingenious, just like you. Aw, thanks. Cox Mobile, the smart way to mobile. Cox postpaid internet required. Cox Mobile runs on the network with unbeatable 5G reliability as measured by Ookla LLC in the U.S. to H 2023. Other restrictions apply. Learn more at cox.com/mobile.
Don't miss this week's Zone Deal.
This week's half-off deal are coupons valued at $50 on sale for just $25 to the Woodcliff Restaurant at Woodcliff Lake in Fremont. It's perfect for a romantic dinner or to bring the whole family to enjoy a culinary treat for any special occasion. $50 on sale for just $25 to the Woodcliff Restaurant at Woodcliff Lake in Fremont. This week's half-off deal.
Zone deals go fast. 9 a.m. Friday, 1620thezone.com.
Are you the decision maker in your company? Consider this. For the first time in decades, there's a better option for a corporate card and spend management platform. Meet Ramp, the only corporate card and spend management system designed to help you spend less money so you can make more. Most corporate credit cards offer points as incentives, but those points amount to less than their worth in real cash value. Ramp's business cards offer you cash back, real money in your pocket. Plus, you control who spends what with each vendor. And Ramp software collects and verifies receipts automatically, which means you'll stop wasteful spending and close your books in hours instead of days. Businesses that use Ramp add up to 5% to their bottom line the first year. If you're a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. And now get $250 when you join Ramp for free. Just go to ramp.com/sports. Ramp.com/sports. RAMP.com/sports.
Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members of FDIC. Terms and conditions apply.
1620 The Zone at 1620thezone.com. And we're back. Mornings with Sharp and Handley. Here's Gary, Nick, and Jimmy on 1620 The Zone.
Back in the 7 o'clock hour, Peter mentioned it in the update with Caitlin Clark having, well, it was her most complete game. She went for 30 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. She had 3 blocks, 3 assists. In a loss, when you're picked first, as most drafts go, typically means that team is a little bit more on the struggle bus. It's going to take a little while to get things going. Even the addition of a generational type talent like Caitlin Clark.
I love Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah. You didn't see the Spurs or my Chicago Blackhawks who got Connor Bedard. Chicago was right back in the mix of possibly getting the lottery go their way again, meaning they did not have a good season. But it wasn't necessarily her night on the floor that she had. She spoke candidly, and I know this is, before I even finish this, I know this is what rubs people the wrong way about Caitlin Clark, and I have a different viewpoint of this. But she spoke candidly about she feeling like she's being officiated differently and not in a good way, where a lot of teams and players are getting away with more contact and playing her more physical than others without being called for a foul. And I didn't take this as she didn't see this coming. I took this as a highly successful athlete that, despite getting the majority of the calls in college, she would still chirp at the officials. As Gary likes to refer to people that will have the old palms up either after they're called for a foul or they don't get the call when they feel they were fouled, the palms up person. And yes, Caitlin Clark, like Luka Doncic, is a palms up person. I'll be honest, though. I think she knows her value in the WNBA. A lot of things have happened in the WNBA that I don't think are happening if Caitlin Clark and more light was not shed on how the players in the WNBA are treated. And a big part of that was the fact that now they're chartering flights as opposed to flying commercial, where I think everybody in the background knew that that was the case, but there was no major uproar about it. Now, all of a sudden, you find out about what a player makes. The fact that they fly commercial because you're paying more attention because of Caitlin Clark, whether you want to admit it or not. So there's been a lot of positive progress with a lot of those aspects of being a player in the WNBA. I say that because I think Caitlin Clark realizes that when she does speak or when she is able to bring light to something, that it is typically followed up at least with some consideration, some conversation, and sometimes even some action. By her saying last night that she feels she is being officiated differently and that players are getting away with more physical contact to her, on its face seems like a player that is complaining, that is being openly critical of officiating and is, okay, call it what it is, whining. But could it be that she understands when she does bring something up like this, like any real star does, whether you're in your rookie year or you've been a long tenured veteran, that doesn't go unnoticed by officials, by the commissioner of such leagues of, hey, we want to make sure that this is at least addressed. Is she getting bumped a lot more and there are no fouls? Is this the whole welcome to the WNBA, Caitlin Clark? Well, yeah, 100% it is.
And we kind of saw the way that this last week when Angel Reese went down hard and the game against Connecticut kind of took it in stride and essentially said, they're not supposed to treat me like I'm new here.
Yeah.
Like I might be a first year player, but nothing's going to get handed to me.
Yeah.
And that was a brutal flagrant. Like that was a tough, I watched it back. That she had every right to not be pleased with that. But, yeah, it's interesting that happens last week. And then this week we're getting into the discourse of officiating someone at the level of Caitlin Clark and these first year players. And kind of that two sides of the coin of how they're interpreting it, how they're taking it. It's just interesting to me.
And she did say, I'll say this for her. She did at the end of what was, I wouldn't call a rant, but was a complaining moment. She said, it is what it is. This is what I expected. But you are putting it out there. I don't think necessarily just to come across as a crybaby or someone who can't take the heat type situation. I think it's more of, hey, I'm putting this out there so it is looked upon, even if it has to get up to the highest level, that those things will change for me. And you're right. You can interpret it in two different ways. I'm trying to go the contrarian route because last night all I heard was, oh my gosh, Caitlin Clark complaining about not getting calls. And you're probably not necessarily wrong, but I also thought of it as, what if it's Caitlin Clark understanding how powerful her words can be with what she means to this league?
And there's definitely there's something to be said there.
And if you want to invoke change when it comes to the way that you're being officiated, but you don't say anything about it, I'm not going to do anything. It's when you get on a public forum, even something as simple as a post-game presser, and bring it up, that there are players, especially in this draft class, but her more so than others, that I think at some point will be protected when it comes to that. So if you bring it up, there could be action. And not necessarily against Caitlin Clark. Now, then the repercussions of that is other players in the league hear about that, and they take it upon themselves. All right, we're going to keep – we interpret this as her being frustrated and maybe a chance to rattle her.
Yeah.
So let's keep doing this until we do get called for this, because you're not going to change. You're not going to change the way you want to go about it. There is the welcome to the league, to this rookie class by all those players. I think they've been chomping at the bit to throw their weight around a little bit, and they're doing so. And this is why she continues to get talked about, because it's not just her talent, but she does things or says things that can be portrayed as whining about not getting everything you feel you should get, a privilege of being that type of a player where everything should be handed to you. And you brought up what Angel Reese says, completely opposite of what Caitlin Clark was saying last night. But is there more than just complaining about it? Is there, hey, by speaking about this, maybe there's action that follows? I don't know. We'll see. I don't think the players are going to go about changing the way that they defend her. But does the league try to look at things a little bit more on how they're being officiated?
It's certainly early enough in her career where, if they wanted to adjust how one specific player is officiated in game.
Yep.
And I mean, we've seen that in the NBA. The styles of certain players are certainly more prone to get those whistles.
Yep, absolutely. All right, when we come back, we're going to get into some college football post-spring headlines. And again, we won't get into settlements and NIL money and all that. We'll get into some real college football conversation. Bill Bender, national college football writer for the Sporting News, joins us as we kick off hour number 4 next.
Mornings with Sharp and Handley returns in minutes on 1620 The Zone. Live from the Host Coffee Studio, this is 1620 The Zone. 1620 The Zone. Traffic.
From the Pyramid Roofing Time Saving Traffic Center. No accidents to report in the Omaha Metro. You might experience some delays if you're headed from I-680 to the westbound Dodge Expressway. Also, there's slow goings on eastbound Dodge from I-680 to 90th and on westbound Dodge from 72nd to 84th. A reminder that Millard Ave is closed between 144th and U due to road construction. You want to get around that area using Q Street. Like I said, everything else is smooth sailing. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Just be sure to buckle up and drive safe out there. I'm Joey Colbert.
This time-saving traffic was brought to you by the Nebraska Lottery.
Enter the NASCAR Powerball Playoff. Buy a Powerball ticket with Power Play or Double Play and enter the voucher number. You could win a VIP trip to the NASCAR Cup Series Championship Weekend. Powerball top prize odds 1 in 292 million.
Let's go on a fishing trip you will be talking about for years. The best walleye fishing trip ever. Join me, Chris Davis. We're going to travel to the walleye capital of the world, September 15th through the 19th aboard a deluxe motor coach. Travel with me to Ballard's Resort on Lake of the Woods. Pricing includes round-trip motor coach transportation, 4 nights lodging, 3 days of fully guided walleye fishing, and all of our meals. Go fishing with me, Crash. Your best trip ever. Sign up at ballardsresort.com. ballardsresort.com. And set the hook.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. If you were exposed to toxic substances in the military, a new law called the PACT Act may make you eligible for extra benefits and care. The PACT Act benefits veterans of the Vietnam, Gulf War, and post 9/11 eras. Learn more at va.gov/PACT or call 1-800-MyVA411.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential, but finding those people can be a major hassle, unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. And right now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. With ZipRecruiter, one click sends your job to hundreds of top job sites. But more than that, ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies the candidates with the skills you need, sends you a list of great matches to review, then actively invites them to apply for your job. And the results speak for themselves. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. That's right, the first day. Now you can focus on your business and let ZipRecruiter do the work finding the best people for you. See for yourself. Experience the ease, efficiency, and power of ZipRecruiter for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio.
Tickets for less. Best seats, best prices, no service fees. Shop ticketsforless.com. KOZN Bellevue, Omaha, Council Bluffs. This is 1620 The Zone.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here. I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe and is the best way to protect that legacy. Protect your legacy. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Now back to mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone.
It's list season. It's meeting season. It's futures odds season. It's anonymous coaches talking about other teams in their conference season, all kinds of fun things in college football. But you know what? I don't mind talking about any of that stuff, especially with our next guest, as long as we can stay away from settlement conversations and the offseason that has been just a bit of an ear sore when it comes to college football. As we welcome in Bill Bender, national writer, college football for the Sporting News. Bill, first of all, how's the summer treating you thus far?
I still talk about the one time I was on with you and I was yelling at one of our lacrosse moms in the car ahead of me on the air. So we're still doing the she still likes that story all the time. But fortunately, I'm not in the car right now. We're getting through the summer sports season with the kids, and like you said, it's just ear sore is a good way to put it with some of those off the field discussions.
Yeah, I don't know a better way to describe it. That it just, I feel like, and you've been covering this for a while. We've seen the changing landscape of college football. It just feels like when we get into summer post Memorial Day weekend that we are chomping at the bit to just give us a season, because typically the headlines that come out of college football, whether we're talking about conference realignment or any other news story that involves some type of either confusing situation or something that is just unrecognizable with college football, I feel like it just makes it that much more important to get us to the kickoff of the weekend.
One of the things that I think is contributing to the excitement of this season is the video game.
Mm-hmm.
And I've thought about this a little bit. Now, I'm old enough to remember playing I shouldn't say this probably. Bill Walsh college football.
I do too. I am right there with you.
So that might date me a little bit, but I was thinking about this, that this new video game, my son's in 7th grade. He's never really played an NCAA football game. So I think that generation of fans is going to contribute some excitement on that level. I'm going to have to dust off my old skills, but and I think that's going to be helpful. The 12-team playoff, we can get into that if you want. I don't know how I feel about it yet, especially because the NFL is shown through the scheduling that they're going to not care. They're going to do what they want to do through it anyway.
The play, and you're right. I'm right there with you with the video game. It gives you something to kind of sink your teeth into throughout the summer. And for people, I mean, I'm 45 years old and I'm right there with you. I remember the Bill Walsh game and that was absolutely a blast. I think a lot of people that were around our generation that experienced that still consider that to be the OG. I don't even know. I was telling our producer Peter, I don't have a gaming console right now. My son is 3, so he's not doing that yet either. But this might force me to get back into it, and I think there is part of that. There is the change. I mean, the new look Big Ten is obviously intriguing. The Oklahoma-Texas addition to the SEC is obviously intriguing. There are things that I think people are excited about of what should we expect, what to watch that's not necessarily controversial. And you mentioned the 12-team playoff. I wouldn't put that as maybe a controversial part of it, but also how is this going to work? Are we going to start seeing the 13th, 14th, and 15th team crying foul when they don't make it into the college football playoff, that all of a sudden now we're going to see the expansion, which already sounds like we're going to expand at some point here too. There's, to me, Bill, and this is, I've been pro student athlete. I think there is always a sense that they should be compensated when it comes to name, image, likeness, basically having the same type of opportunities as any regular student on campus when it does come to using their name, image, likeness. It's when we start getting into settlements. It's when we start talking about players being compensated. It's when we start talking about one of those old stories that I laughed at when Kane Coulter and Northwestern wanted to unionize. Now I look at it here in 2024 thinking we're not that far away from this. When it starts to become that unrecognizable, it's a big turnoff for a lot of people, and I understand that.
Yeah, and I know I was talking at that lacrosse practice last night. One of the fun parts is standing around with the dads who are all college football fans, and I'm in Central Ohio, and guys our age range. And by the way, I'll be 45 in October.
All right.
Long for the BCS days.
Mm-hmm.
As strange as that sounds, I had one dad tell me last night, and it stuck with me. He said, he goes, I'm okay if we vote for number 1. And he goes, I would be okay with that. I would be okay with the BCS. And of course, he's a Georgia fan. So I think that there's something to that. You just said it. all season, we're not going to talk about who's number one anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about who's 13, like we did with the NCAA tournament and the bubble. That's going to be, when I come on your show in the fall, who might squeeze in the playoff. We're pretty much going to ignore Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas until December.
Yep. Yeah, it's almost boring to talk about the dominant teams and what we know they're going to be in. Let's get into who has a chance to be in there, because there are teams, there are programs like the team we cover here locally in Nebraska that would be a realistic goal down the road, that if you can put yourself into that top tier of the Big Ten, no one's going to confuse Nebraska of trying to get back to a national championship status. But to be part of the college football playoff that opens that up to programs that are trying to get back on their feet, that seems like the jumping off point if you're looking for some tangible goals there. And I think it does create a little interest from those markets. But you see this all the time with Ohio State. At what point will the Ohio State story, which I assume they're going to be right in there as one of the top seeds, at what point of the season will the Ohio State story just because they're too good, we don't need to really dwell on them?
Well, I think that's part of it, and this could be a really good Ohio State team, obviously, with the offseason changes that were made. But I felt that way last year. I mean, Michigan went 15-0. We talked about Michigan, but we didn't talk about anything on the field.
Right.
We talked about the Connor Stallions thing for about a month. They responded, and it really wasn't until they played Ohio State and Penn State that we were actually talking about, hey, this is a pretty good team on the field. And they were. And, one of the things with college football that also gets lost here, and it's something that we both grew up with, I'm safe to say this, is that I've always thought this sport thrives on a little bit of controversy. It thrives on the year-long discussion about who's number one.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this sport is rooted in. I mean, we just talked about Michigan. There are people I know that talk about Michigan and Nebraska from 1997 to this day. Yeah. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It contributes to the lore of the sport in some ways that we still talk about a hypothetical game between those two schools.
And if you're to look at what's going on right now, and I'm going back on what I said. I said, we're just going to talk football and the good things about it right now. But I do want to ask you this. With the settlements that all of the NCAA is now supporting, and all of the Power Four conferences are as well, for old school fans that are looking to possibly find the bottom of all of this, so we know what it's going to look like. I mean, it just seems like every year there's something changing. There's something that's going to be monumental in the shift of student athlete experience in college athletes, but also especially in football. Is this the payouts, the revenue share, if you will, with student athletes? Does this have an opportunity, in your opinion, Bill, to temper things a little bit, or to calm things down a little bit, to maybe we have what could be as real as we can possibly, or I'm sorry, as normal as what we can possibly expect off seasons?
I think the simple answer is I don't think so, because this is a sport governed by emotion. And I say that, okay, we're going to give the athletes revenue sharing per school, and there's 20 million or so. Schools, they're still going to do the collectives. We're still going to have instances like Jaden Rashada, that case that happened where he sued the coach because he's not getting the money that was promised from NIL. I think that is something that definitely needs tempered, needs guardrails. But I just read something this morning. Sorry, I can't cite it. I've been reading through a lot of things, but I think there was a sentence in there that was basically, who thinks that the Georgias and the Texas A&Ms are going to want a level playing field in college football, a sport that's never had a level playing field.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to keep in mind, as I think the spending will continue.
We're talking to Bill Bender, senior writer for the Sporting News covering college football. So I do want to get your thoughts on this Ohio State team, the way that it is made up, not only the transfers that they've been very successful in getting in the offseason, but also having Chip Kelly be able to just coach and not have to worry about being a head coach, but be able to run an offense, get in the lab and create things that I think should probably send a lot of shivers up many defensive coordinators in the Big Ten spine. When you look at this Ohio State team, and I would venture to guess too, and you know this better than I would, that there's a lot of pressure on Ryan Day, and you're seeing the adjustments staff wise and roster wise accordingly, right?
Yeah, I mean I've used the analogy to The Empire Strikes Back all offseason. They've watched Michigan win a national title.
Yeah, Michigan
has beat them 3 consecutive times for the first time since 95, 97, when I was probably playing Bill Walsh at that time. It's an unprecedented response because of the pressure that comes with that one game. So they go get Quinshad Judkins, they get Will Howard, they get Caleb Downs, might be the best player in the country, and they got him from Alabama. They kind of fell into that one, obviously, with Saban retiring. And then Chip Kelly. And that kind of ties into this discussion we're having, which is really awesome, by the way. Think about that. He chose to be a head coach for a school in the Big Ten now, so he could call plays. Essentially, the thinking there, and he said as much in the spring game, he wants to get back to coaching the kids. I don't think head coaches at big-time universities, probably if you pulled all of them, they would say, no, I don't have enough time to coach anymore.
Yeah. I remember this, Bill, and it was something that I filed this away as keep your eye on this. And this was Dan Mullen on his way out. I think it was his final year, and mentioned how he thought a lot of other coaches were really going to look at the landscape of college football when it comes to the way that they not only have to recruit traditionally, but re-recruit their current roster and then recruit the transfer portal. How much time was being put into that? And it didn't come across as a guy that was complaining given how much money he was making at Florida. But I thought it was an interesting thing to hear from a guy that also I would put into that category of old school coaches, guys that got it for the reason of like you said with Chip Kelly, of just wanting to coach. And now they're looking at what they can and can't do and what they have to be on top of every hour of every day. And then you get Nick Saban retired, not saying it was all because of the changing landscape, but I'm sure it had a lot to do with it. That how much energy do some of these coaches that are now in their late 50s, early 60s are all of a sudden looking for the end of the head coaching experience right now?
Right. And it's definitely, it's just a changing environment. Dan Mullen, a great coach on the, and some of those guys, like I still believe, when I was down in Houston for the national championship game, I was, you know how we do it as journalists. We try to create a story, so to speak, sometimes. And I was going around the, personalities and people and sources and saying, who do you think Alabama's next coach should be? And the overwhelming response I got at the time was, we don't see Nick Saban retiring. It would be a disservice. I remember one source said it would be a disservice to even come up with a replacement. I really believe he retired kind of complete whim, but I think he just said, I'm good. I've had it.
Yeah.
He sat in his office, said, I've had it. And because of all these reasons that you're talking about, and that's not to say Nick Saban couldn't win in this environment. I just think he's just like, I don't want to.
I agree. I think there was a lot about what he had already accomplished to what he knew this next phase of college football, and him being still as one of the most highly regarded coaches was going to have to do to stay on top. And I think he got out while the getting was still good for him. But I also wonder, Bill, what type of coach in the next 10 years, what type of profile will that coach have to fit in to be not only a successful coach, but someone that can sustain success? And I don't know if I have the answer to that because of the energy and the attention to every little detail that you're going to have. I don't know what type of coach that will be.
Well, I mean, Kirby in our coach rankings is ranked number 1, which is an easy ranking because obviously he's won 2 national titles, but he's been able to build that machine through recruiting. I still think the talent's going to matter the most. And I guess the big challenge will be, how do you retain that talent? Where does your talent come from? Re-recruiting the roster. You mentioned that. I think one of the tweets that struck me last week, Pete Thamel, my alma mater, Ohio University. Frank Solich did a fantastic job there. I have to mention that anytime I come on in Nebraska.
We appreciate that.
They had 21 players transfer up, essentially.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of my roommates in college who played at Ohio, and his question to me was, he said, Billy, he goes, how many of those 21 guys do you think get what they expect when they transfer instead of just developing at Ohio, where you could still be an NFL draft pick? And I think that's a valid question. That would be a good story to look in a couple years. Okay, how many of the 20 guys that left the MAC school to go to the Power 5 essentially got their wish?
Yeah.
I think that's something to keep in mind as we move forward as well.
I'm talking with Bill Bender of the Sporting News here. And speaking of coaches and profiles and just certain personalities that work in this new day and age of college football and the ever-shifting landscape, I look at the Big Ten, a huge story this year with the additional teams coming out of the old Pac-12. Dan Lanning seems like the one guy that what he has between the confidence, he seems to connect very well with today's student athlete, but also bringing in a lot of talent when it comes to that. He's one of those guys that I think the Big Ten is definitely keeping their eye on this could be a scary situation in Oregon and Dan Lanning, especially with the roster that they continue to show to build, but just his overall presence. I don't know, that to me, as someone who covers a team in the Big Ten like Nebraska, I feel like it's something that they're going to have to pay attention to.
Well, I just looked at, I'm starting to do some planning for the summer today and taking some inventory. And yes, there'll be a 3-day Big Ten Media Day this year for the first time, July 23rd and 25th. And Oregon, and I don't think this is by accident, is on that final day. Because you kind of start to think, okay, when I go there for those 3 days, what stories am I going to want to hit? Dan Lanning's probably at or near the top of the list. Because he's an it coach, they're an it team. It's a big game against Ohio State on October 12th. All of those things you mentioned and Oregon, the Oregon brand to the Big Ten. I think of those, it's crazy. I would never thought I would have said this to you 10 years ago, but with Oregon and USC being probably the two biggest brands out of those Pac-12 schools coming in, I think Oregon's more important on the outset than USC is.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And so interesting too with the new additions to the Big Ten. You've got this whole Friday night game thing with Fox now. It was, as you can imagine here in Nebraska, Memorial Stadium and the amount of sellouts and the way that thing looks on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, having to host a game on a Friday night. We know this isn't going to be a regular occurrence as far as hosting, but there were 3 notable schools that were left out of hosting those games: Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Is that, in your opinion, a status thing, or do you think Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State at some point here in the next handful of years will have their turn in having to be forced by Fox and the Big Ten to have to host a Friday night game?
Well, it's partially status, and I know everybody. This is a tough one to answer on the air as well because I'm an Ohio high school kid. High school football for Friday nights for high school football,
right?
And that's what I'm struggling with this whole idea to begin with. You would put maybe a lower tier game on Friday night. I think some of it is status, but eventually, Ohio State fans are going to be confronted with that. Hey, you have a home game when there's a lot of big games popping off here in Central Ohio, especially where I grew up. And I'm not saying our high school football is better than everybody else's, but it's good here. And it's been pretty good here for a long time. So I think that's part of it. And that's the part that as a traditionalist, and I feel like you are too through talking to you, I just don't like it. I don't like having Big Ten games that you're going to want to pay attention to on Friday night, especially because my kid's probably going to be playing high school football here in 2 years.
Yeah. Bill, I'll get you out here on this. And as we kind of look at, you mentioned a 3-day Big Ten Media Day blitz that'll take place. You've got all of these great storylines. If you're to look at just outside of the addition of USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, if you look at just internally the bigger storylines with this conference, sans that, What are you digging into as we get, well, I know we're not that close, but we're getting there. We're in the summer now, getting closer to Big Ten Media Days.
Close enough, right?
Yeah.
Once it hits July 4th, I better be ready to go.
That's right.
And that's not that far. Sharon Moore.
Yeah.
You know, what's next there? A lot of people are predicting this thing to go off the cliff. I think they've got enough talent this year that won't happen. But anytime you replace a coach of the caliber of Jim Harbaugh, that's a big idea. Nebraska. Rule year 2. Who's going to be the middle tier this middle tier school, quote unquote middle tier school that steps up?
Mm-hmm.
Is it Nebraska? Is it Michigan State with Jonathan Smith? Is it, one of the new Pac-12 additions? And, Penn State's an interesting one. They would have been in the 12-team playoff every year, almost, at least 6 years. When are they going to win the big game? I think those are a couple that stand out apart from the obvious about the additions and Ohio State and what's been a summer tradition that I'm never ready for is is there going to be another round of realignment?
Right.
I hope not.
It's usually right before Big Ten Media Days too. It's usually right after July 4th holiday is usually when we get that information.
Yeah, I mean, I remember pulling into Indianapolis a couple of years ago, and then Oklahoma and Texas joined the SEC, and I was just like, okay, I guess that's what I'm writing about today.
Bill, hey, enjoy the summer. Always appreciate the conversation with you. And if you guys get in some real good conversations over those lacrosse practices, feel free to jump on and share those with us too, okay?
No problem. Thanks so much for having me on. Take care.
See you, Bill. Bill Bender, great guy. Great writer, too, for the Sporting. Has been covering it for a while there. And, it's so funny. It's hard to have that conversation anymore, Peter, when we get into this time of the year. Typically, it's the way too early predictions, the way too early top 25s, the lists. But did you see how going into that conversation, it's so easy to veer off and start talking about, oh, and then there's this, and then there's this. It's almost like you can't have the one conversation without the other. And that's what's been so frustrating about the college football preseason right now is because everything ties into, oh, yeah, well, you have this coach who's there. But the reason he's coaching as an OC is because he doesn't want to be a head coach because of the changing. It's just, it always comes back to that. It's just, I'll call it, it's a miserable preseason. It really is.
And there's just so many unknowns and so many new wrinkles with all the realignment, all the coaching changes. It's just endless storylines into endless storylines.
It is.
Endless storylines.
It's exhausting. Want to get into some of the Big Ten futures odds of winning the Big Ten this year. As you can imagine, Ohio State has the best odds. Where's Nebraska fall in that one? And some of the other teams there near the top. We'll get into that. And also, before we're out of here, we're going to talk more Husker football with Brandon Vogel of counterread.com as we continue 1620 The Zone.
Gary Sharp, Nick Handley, and Jimmy Chavez. Mornings with Sharp and Handley. Weekdays 6 to 10. On 1620 The Zone and 1620thezone.com. The Connor Hafford Show.
Chris writes in on Twitter, there will be no missing Angel Hernandez. Absolutely none. He's terrible, and I'm truly happy to see him go. Do you at all feel bad for a human man, Angel Hernandez, who just so happens to be just awful at his job? Do you at all feel like, all right, he's retiring, we should just let it go, rather than pile on, happy to see you go, rotten hell, you know?
The Connor Hafford Show. Weekdays from 10 to 2 on 1620 The Zone. Your Omaha area forecast from the Godfather's Pizza Weather Center and KETV Newswatch 7 on 1620 The Zone.
A fantastic day ahead for Wednesday. Expect mostly sunny skies throughout the day with the southeast breeze 5 to 15 miles per hour. Borderline top 10 day with highs near 80. I'm meteorologist Sean Everson from KETV Newswatch 7.
Hey, Connor. What's up? So, you're getting an Auto Express Lane certificate in less than a year?
I need to put my career in the fast lane.
And Jenny, in just 5 months, you earned a veterinary assistant certificate?
It's kind of a pet project.
JC, is that
blood? Yeah, I'll be certified as a phlebotomy tech in just 5 months.
A positive, JC. Earn a career certificate in less than a year. Get started at mccneb.edu/adults. Classes start June 5th.
This is me at MCC.
Host is roasting every morning.
At Host Coffee Services, every cup of coffee served comes with a promise of quality, innovation, and a dash of fun, ensuring your workday is as delightful as your coffee break. Call Host Coffee Services today.
Proudly serving Nebraska since 1972. Host Coffee Services is always roasting something good for you.
There are some things that happen every day. In the morning, my paper gets delivered. Thank you. Around noon, my neighbor waters his flowers wearing a bathrobe and hip waders. Hello, Mr. Willis.
Where's my paper?
After dinner, the lady up the street walks her 14 poodles. And just before the 10 o'clock news, the Nebraska lottery winning numbers are drawn for their daily games. Nebraska Pick 3, 2x2, and My Day. With Nebraska Pick 3, you choose your bet type. In 2x2, there's a $22,000 top prize. And with My Day, you choose a 6-digit date. They're all just $1 to play, with drawings every day. Oh, excuse me. Hi, Mr. Willis.
I'm still looking for my paper.
Guess which part of the day is my favorite?
Nebraska Pick 3, 2x2, and My Day top prize odds vary by game.
Hey, you hear that? That's the sound of loose change in your pocket reminding you to buy a 99-cent medium fountain drink from Casey's. So the next time you hear this, you already know where to go. 99-cent medium fountain drinks. It's not crazy. It's Casey's.
The Zone Hotline is powered by 42 Degrees. The Source, by your mom's house.
Email us on the Equitable Bank inbox with whatever's on your mind. Zone Inbox is brought to you by Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. You can get me, Gary, at 1620thezone.com. We want to hear from you on the Equitable Bank Zone Inbox.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online at hims.com/radio. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation to determine the ED medication that's best for you. Discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and a range of treatment options, including trusted generic alternatives to the name brands, at up to 95% off. ED is personal, and at Hims, so is treating it. Just go to hims.com/radio and get connected to a licensed medical provider online for free, with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, hims.com/radio. That's hims.com/radio for your free online visit. hims.com/radio.
Now back to mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone.
Hey, just a moment, I'm going to talk to Brandon Vogel of counterread.com. I want to get his thoughts on a question I have after looking at the Athlon Sports Big Ten coaches speak anonymously about other programs on their schedule, where it was a pretty, I think, positive breakdown of Nebraska from one of the Big Ten coaches that will have Nebraska on their schedule in 2024. By the way, for our friends in Iowa, if you wanted to know what was said about Iowa, this is the Iowa account. Everything here is a automatic except the offense. They're a premier. They're a premier development and depth program at how they scout, build, and develop on defense and special teams. It's just the offensive component. How much is Tim Lester, the new OC, really going to affect this program? How much can Cade McNamara do coming off the injury? Are they going to come out in 11 personnel on first down? Lester was a 3-receiver, 4-receiver look guy at Western Michigan. This is one of the best tight end programs in the history of the game. I don't think anyone really knows what it's going to look like, but the idea that Kirk Ferentz's son was the sole problem on offense, no way. So this person's saying Brian Ferentz was not the sole problem for this offensive woes for Iowa, but that was the account for Iowa. My question with what was said about Nebraska and the confidence that at least one Big Ten peer has that Nebraska will have a breakthrough year. It's just a question of what type of breakthrough it will be, where there was a lot of praise thrown at not only Matt Rule, but also Tony White being retained and not becoming a head coach elsewhere. Is Matt Rule a lot closer to changing the Nebraska narrative than even what we have discussed, too? I want to get into that with Brandon Vogel. But to, again, put a little context, and this is, again, the national perspective, but also this comes from the Vegas perspective as well when it comes to futures odds of winning the Big Ten championship. This CBS Sports putting this out yesterday. Obviously, Ohio State has the best odds to win the championship at plus 160. Oregon, not too far behind there, plus 210. Then you get a little bit of a gap there. Penn State is behind them at plus 450. Michigan is plus 525. Then we started getting into some of the long shots here. USC is plus 1,600. Iowa is plus 3,000. Washington is plus 4,000. Nebraska is plus 4,000. Then Wisconsin plus 6,000. Maryland plus 8,000. Rutgers plus 9,000. UCLA plus 9. Michigan State plus 10. Northwestern plus 10, Illinois plus 15, Minnesota plus 20, Purdue plus 30, and Indiana plus 40. I kind of look at where the number is with Nebraska, who's just in front of them, who are they having similar numbers with, and who's just behind them. So you have Iowa, who's just in front of Nebraska at plus 3,000. Nebraska has the same odds to win the Big Ten championship as Washington at plus 4,000. And just behind him, this is the one that was a little bit more telling to me or interesting. And again, these are just odds. Doesn't mean this is going to happen, but how maybe they're viewed given rosters and what have you. Wisconsin at plus 6,000. Nebraska plus 4,000. Wisconsin plus 6,000. When we think of that, as Bill Bender was talking about, the middle tier of the Big Ten, or maybe teams out of the Big Ten West, as we were talking about earlier, that have a chance to try to make that jump ahead to an upper tier 2 team or possibly even a bottom tier 1 team. It does sound like you have Iowa and Nebraska part of that conversation as it pertains to preseason win totals and futures odds to win the Big Ten. That Wisconsin, amongst those three, is holding up the rear a little bit. Win total, I believe, for Wisconsin was exact same for Nebraska at 7.5. But as far as to win the championship, and a lot of it to win the Big Ten also goes into your schedule. Who are some of those teams? Especially, are you going to USC? Are you playing Oregon this year? Who's on your schedule from that new group of 4 that's coming into the Big Ten? They list the best bet is Ohio State plus 160, and I think that speaks for itself just because on paper they're without question the best team in the Big Ten in 2024. The worst wager, according to Tom Fornelli of CBS, would be Penn State at plus 450, just because, again, it's a team that has, and Bill even said it, is yet to maybe win that most deciding game, that impactful game that can put them into the top spot. Value pick, Michigan at plus 525, and then the long shot, he's got USC at plus 1,600, which, yeah, you would probably not going as far as, say, Nebraska or Wisconsin or Iowa even. But once you start getting into the 1,600, yeah, that all makes sense. But how Nebraska is viewed in all this, I think is very interesting from the national standpoint from Vegas. A lot of people trying to study Nebraska, trying to get a read for Nebraska would indicate, in my opinion, based on numbers, that this is a team where the floor for 2024, in their estimation, would be bowl eligibility at 6.
I would stand pat with that.
7 feels right to me. It's kind of been and it's kind of been a lot of our, between Gary, myself, and Jimmy, and I think even Connor, and I'm not sure the guys in the afternoon. I think maybe Bishop is going a little higher this year. I'm not sure, but I know a lot of us are kind of sitting around that 7 mark, which I think is fair. I don't think is unrealistic.
I think it's very reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Especially with the opportunities. I don't say you don't chalk anything up to a win, but there's some good opportunities in the first half, that front half of the schedule. So just hope like that actually plays out that way when there are good opportunities. All right, speaking of Nebraska, to talk more about Husker football with Brandon Vogel of counterread.com next.
Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone and 1620thezone.com with Gary Sharp and Nick Handley. Omaha's America's most listened to all sports radio station. Again and again and again. 1620 The Zone.
My taco pie is really something special, and it can't be imitated. It starts with my zesty taco sauce, seasoned beef, onions, lettuce, tomatoes, mounds of cheddar, and mozzarella cheese. This pie is the real deal. For a limited time, build your own feast with the specialty pizza, like my taco pie, a one-topping pizza, and cinnamon monkey bread. Do yourself a favor and order. Today, Godfather's Pizza. Do it.
When it comes to concrete repair, Everlevel has some serious game. Coach Greg McDermott here to coach you on why you should choose Everlevel Concrete Repair. They've got the fundamentals to fix your cracked and uneven concrete, and their products will give you the best defense against future damage. It's a fraction of the price compared to replacement, and their solutions come with a long-term transferable warranty. Working with Everlevel is a slam dunk. Call Everlevel Concrete Repair today for your free inspection.
How powerful is Cox Fiber? Powerful enough to let your band members in Vegas, Phoenix, and Omaha jam like you're all in the same garage. Introducing Cox Fiber from the company with the fastest download speeds 9 years in a row. It's internet built for tomorrow, today. Cox, always building better. Limited availability in select areas. Speeds vary and are not guaranteed. Cox terms and other restrictions may apply. Analysis by Ookla Speed Test Intelligence in Las Vegas, Omaha, Phoenix. Fixed median download speeds Q2 2016 to Q1 2024.
Seasons change. Why not your tech? Upgrade now during the Dell Technologies Summer Sale event and save on select PCs like the XPS 16 powered by Intel Core processors. You'll be able to bring your most intensive projects to life with built-in AI, minimalistic design, immersive visuals, and cinematic audio. When you shop online at Dell.com/deals, you'll have access to exceptional tech and electronics plus free shipping on everything. Amazing prices await you for a limited time only at Dell.com/deals. That's Dell.com/deals.
The Woodcliff Restaurant in Fremont is just minutes away from Omaha at Woodcliff Lake, your perfect dinner destination. Don't mistake the small town charm for small town food because the Woodcliff Restaurant is a culinary treat. Voted Omaha's best outdoor patio, it's perfect for a romantic dinner or to bring the whole family to enjoy watching the fish and boats from the lakefront patio. Stop fighting traffic, parking, and one-way streets. Slow down and enjoy a fantastic dinner at the lake. Check them out at woodcliffrestaurant.com or Facebook for specials and events.
And we're back. Mornings with Sharp and Handley. Here's Gary, Nick, and Jimmy on 1620 The Zone.
Can Nebraska football and Matt Rule, can they change the narrative? On the day that we talked about the anonymous breakdown of each team from Big Ten coaching staffs, the Nebraska breakdown was somewhat positive and optimistic that Matt Rule and Nebraska will have a breakthrough. The question is, what type of breakthrough will they have? As we welcome in Brandon Vogel of counterread.com. Brandon, I asked the question earlier, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. In changing the narrative of Nebraska of a all-flash-looking team, but when it comes down to in between the lines, too many mistakes, keeps them from the finish line, keeps them from bowl eligibility. How close do you think? And I know this is a tough question to answer definitively without seeing what year two will look like on the field. But as far as the work behind the scenes, how close do you think Matt Rule and the staff is to changing that narrative?
It feels to me, I think, closer than kind of the last offseason I compare to this one in terms of bullishness, which was 2019. Matt Rule talks about those sorts of things, I think, more than I recall hearing during the same period 5 years ago. I think it's kind of a bigger part of his coaching philosophy. You know, these anonymous coach quotes from Athlon are one of my favorite things every off season. Actually writing about it for tomorrow at counterread.com. So go subscribe now if you want that to show up in your inbox. And I was going through some of the past greatest hits from these, and 2019 was a very bullish year. The time you get to 2021, you've got a coach saying Nebraska's kind of the all bust team, but they struggle with turnovers and technique, and it's a culture issue. So provides you a pretty good arc of what it was. But at this point, you know, looking at the comments for this year, Very reminiscent of 2019. And to your point, I think, like, does it feel more real this time?
Right.
To me, it does. It does a little bit.
The culture thing, and I do remember that, and I think we all remember the all bus reference to him, which was one of the great ones, and it was so true when you would watch them play out. And I remember, Brandon, I didn't want to accept that as the reality for Nebraska, but this is coming off of based on what these coaches are seeing. And they're just going off of, they're basically answering a simple question of, okay, tell us what you think about Nebraska. How are they discussed? And I think it is very telling. And when you watch that season play out, you're like, oh, okay, maybe there is something to it. I do think you mentioned culture because that was always in question. And I feel like this is maybe another feather in the cap for Matt Rule is, I don't know about you, I feel like we've talked less about the culture for Nebraska football. And I think that's a good thing because I don't think anymore we're really questioning that part of this program being built under Matt Rule as much as we were the previous 5-6 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, Nebraska's ability to retain players through this offseason, retain Tony White, that's a big piece of this too. Helps solidify that a little bit. Like, we can't really learn anything about culture through the offseason other than those sorts of things. But I also, to go back to kind of where we started, I think the fact that Rule kind of consistently brings these things up, some of the social media stuff that they do in terms of what they choose to share, I think helps a little bit with that. Being a little bit more open, in terms of, I guess, media access or what the program chooses to share itself, I think bolsters that a little bit too. So, and we'll see, we're talking about turnover issues in 2021. Well, they had turnover issues last year. The difference is like, if you trace the error, you can kind of trace it back to, well, there were a lot of turnovers from the quarterbacks, be it fumble or interceptions. So nothing's ever that simple, but in this case, that one sticks out a little bit, even amongst many negative turnover seasons for Nebraska over the past decade.
I did think there was something very interesting about the assessment of this defense under Tony White and talking about the Nebraska of old with the size that they have up front on that defensive line of scrimmage. I'm always curious in the national narrative because I think it's largely positive for 2024 for Nebraska, but then also getting within the conference, it seems like there is still that reputation right there. What have you kind of taken away from what this defense projects to be, but also the reputation that just that side of the football is getting? Does it start with just Tony White and the respect people have for him as a DC, or do you just look at the Jimmies and the Joes that are still going to be a part of this defense that we saw a year ago, and that's what you start with if you're putting a lot of stock into that side of the football?
Yeah, I think from a Jimmy's and Joe's perspective, factoring in a year of development for the returning guys, and I think some of the young guys who are, set to make kind of an official debut, maybe they saw the field a bit. That's poised to be better, but I still think at this point there's not surefire, I don't think, first team all conference players there. I mean, you could come up with a couple, but it's not like, Ohio State where you're just like, yeah, there's gonna be 6 first team all Big Ten players over there, or Michigan at this point. That's probably even a better bit talking defensively. So I think a lot of it is about kind of what Tony White has shown over his coaching career, and showed in a really big way in his first year at Nebraska. It's a sort of a unique scheme in the Big Ten. I mean, it's out there other places. Coaches are familiar with it, of course, but it can be really diverse. And if they're going to play a bunch of guys, which has always been their plan, they can really mix up looks and be challenging for opposing offenses. And I think, in a transfer portal era, and this is certainly true of the Big Ten now, you've got so much turnover at quarterback that a defense that has that as a trait probably even gets a little bit of boost of just being like, yeah, we're going to make this real tough on your young guy or your transfer who came in from the Sun Belt or wherever.
Talking to Brandon Vogel of counterread.com here on 1620 The Zone. Anytime there's something mentioned about Tony White, how they're able to retain him, he doesn't become a head coach elsewhere, it always makes me think of the future of that defensive philosophy. And I think it's not if, it's when Matt Rule has to find a replacement for Tony White, because he just seems destined that he will be a head coach in the near future. Do you think this year, and again, establishing what they want to do defensively and having more familiarity, even with guys that will not be here next year up front, but being able to establish that baseline of what this defense needs to be, especially that younger crop, do you think this defense will continue? Maybe the best question is it sustainable in your opinion, even without Tony White, maybe in year 3 or year 4?
Yeah, I mean, losing a coach of White's caliber, based on what we saw last year, and again, I'd be very surprised if there was a major fall off this year, complicates things. But that said, Rule earlier in the winter said, like, look, defense is like how I build these things, and we've always been pretty good. And I think it's a little bit easier, even though I said I think Nebraska's current scheme offers it maybe a little bit of an edge, whether they continued to run that or whether they didn't. Defense is so much, I think, kind of attitude and work based. And that comes from the head coach, even if he's not coordinating the defense for the most part. So I do think Nebraska would be okay on that front. A lot of this too just comes down to years where you return a bunch of guys and the years where you don't. And even that, like, if you can just ride that, if it's just like, yeah, we had to replace a bunch and we took a slight step back, but we'll be better for a year from now, that would be maintaining. And Nebraska hasn't done that really on either side of the ball consistently, very recently at all.
If we're to see a year 2 jump, which I think a lot of people would point you to, yes, I like the way that this was phrased in the anonymous breakdown of there will be a breakthrough in year 2. It's just a question of what that breakthrough looks like. If that's to happen, in your opinion, Brandon, is it as simple as just having at least average quarterback play? When I say average, that is making the higher percentage passes and being able to protect the football? Or is there anything that, even if quarterback play isn't elevated to a higher level, that Nebraska still sees that jump in year 2, despite quarterback play maybe being a little bit more slow starting?
Yeah, I think for this to season win total 7.5, let's call it 8, say, or as exceeding expectations. I think you'd need above average quarterback play at this point. And that's mostly because I like Nebraska's skill position talent around quarterback, but it's still largely unproven. Certainly unproven when you factor in the transfers, I guess, at least in the Big Ten. So I think you're going to need your quarterback to offer you something. Being just average, protecting the football would be a major step forward, and I think would have a big difference for Nebraska compared to last season. But if you want to talk about 8 or higher, getting to that, probably need to get something more out of the quarterback, a top half of the league type of quarterback, I think. And presumably, if that's true freshman, that would be a pretty strong year, until we know a little bit more about what Nebraska is going to have. I think particularly receiver and running back.
I know you mentioned you got the breakdowns coming up as far as what other coaches have talked about Nebraska. What do you got coming up here in the near future on counterread.com?
Yeah, so that'll go yet this week, and then we'll, hard to believe, be into June, which is truly kind of the dog days for college football. But we've got a plan. We'll have plenty of good camp stuff. June's going to be really big in terms of recruiting, so have some stuff I've been working on, kind of bigger picture recruiting wise, and see where Matt Rule's at. I mean, they've got 2 classes signed at this point, and they're well on their way to a 3rd class. So we're getting to a point where we've got some meaningful, I think, information to work with. So that's kind of part of the plan for June.
All right, check it out at counterread.com. Great Substack between Brandon and Aaron Sorensen. They do fantastic work. Brandon joins us every Wednesday this time. Appreciate it, Brandon. Have a great rest of the week, my man.
You too. Thanks a lot.
All right, big thanks to our guests on the show today, Kyle Peterson, Bill Bender, and Brandon Vogel. If you missed any of it, we will have the radio replays there for you, 1620thezone.com. You can also check it out on the app as well. Coming up, Connor Happer's show. They will be getting back into, I'm assuming, some maybe Spencer Schwellenbach news, because Josh Hodson's a huge Braves fan as well. So yeah. So stick around for the Connor Happer show. We'll do the crossover with Connor. For Peter, I'm Nick. Appreciate you making us part of your Wednesday. Have a great rest of the day. We're back with you tomorrow at 6 a.m. We'll talk to you then here on 1620 The Zone.
Live from the Host Coffee Studio. This is